Well, hello, friends. Tonight we have a very special show. You already know Larry Mitchell is in the house, one of my favorite guitar players. I would say, out of the best smiles in the entire entertainment industry, there is nobody that has a bigger, better, more heartfelt smile than Larry Mitchell. And then there's his playing and his personality. So, with that said, ladies and gentlemen, Larry Mitchell. Larry, how you doing, my
You guys,
friend?
I'm good and you?
Doing great, thank you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on here.
So, where do we begin? So, obviously, I dialed the clock back a little bit to that very first release.
hmm
You're an impassioned young man with a double neck here and there, taking the world by storm. Can you walk us through some of the highlights of your career that, like, peak moments that really stand out? You're like, this was a moment.
There, I've been lucky. There are a lot of moments, a lot of cool moments. Um, First record that record came out 30 years ago, so that was a moment. Um, and actually, I believe the night that I signed my record deal, a young 12-year-old Joe Bonamassa played that night as well. Um, right before I went on. Um, I did a tour with a Spanish Italian artist named Miguel Jose. That was an amazing trip outside of America and all over Spain and Italy, and having a great time. Playing with Rick Ocasek from the Cars, playing with Billy Squire. Um, the records I've done. I started a second career as a producer, which became a main career for a while. I won a Grammy for producing and engineering, and won a bunch of other awards in New Mexico Music Awards for producing and engineering as well. Um, I see Robinson's on there. Hey, Mark. Um, let's see. Been on The Price is Right. Uh, Played on the record for the Dalai Lama. Uh, I don't know. Didn't get to meet him, but we did play for Nelson Mandela when I played with Tracy Chapman. I did play with Tracy Chapman as well. Um, Vi Academy, being on stage with Steve Vai, hanging out with you guys, hanging out with you at Vi Academy and Satch's G4 experience. Doing that has been a wonderful thing. Um, just playing and having people enjoy the music, getting some really nice emails and messages and stuff like that. So there's a lot of stuff. It's hard to pinpoint different, uh, lots of little things and stuff like that. But
That's awesome. Hey, can you do me a favor and give me a little bit more level, about maybe 10% more?
I have no. I'm just on the phone, so
Then,
I'll lean.
then, all right, good, good, good. I'll roll with that. So,
Okay.
the interesting thing is that there are so many different places that a player can go. And one of my favorite things about you, uh, now, one of the things that I read said that you were born, I hate to do this, but because I was born in 1964, rumor has
hmm
it we were born in the same year. Is that true?
I'm born in 1964, December of 1964. When's your birthday? When did you
September.
have a
I'm
birthday?
older than you. You'll always be younger than me. I love that.
All right.
Okay, so one of my favorite stories is the reason you started playing guitar was because your mom threw your drums out the window. Is that true?
Absolutely. I had a toy drum set and I was playing, and my mom was like, "I'm trying to watch TV. Don't hit the drums." And attention span of a 7, 8 year old, whatever it is really low. So it's like, oh, okay, that's 5 minutes. That's long enough. Let me play. And she asked me again not to play, and then she asked me again, and she said, if you hit them again, they're going out the window. So they went out the window, and that began a guitar career.
I love it. Actually, I played drums too, much to my neighbor's
hmm
chagrin. I figured if it
hmm
was loud, I was all in. So, do you think the drum thing actually, first of all, what I love about your playing, many things that I love about it, is you have
Thank
this
you.
great time. Even when you're shredding like a madman, you're really relaxed in your time. Do you think the drum thing is tied into it, or is just kind of your approach to the guitar, or maybe a little bit of both?
Uh, I'm a big fan of drummers. I'm absolutely a big fan of drummers. and the rhythm. And the first 5 years of me really playing guitar, I didn't play any leads. I didn't really understand what that was. It was all rhythm guitar, and then I was in a band with a lead player, and he had lead player syndrome too. Um, he did show up one day, and they said, "You take a solo." And I playing scales, but I didn't know about actual solos and stuff. So I just gave it a shot, and they liked it, and then they suggested I play some more solos throughout the when he came back, and that didn't go over well, um, but that's where it started. And then my friends took me to see Van Halen up close, and that was the beginning of like, oh my god, yes, I want to do this. So yeah.
So
I think rhythm is important. I think if you look at most lead guitar players that uh, that are that most people think are really great, they have a strong sense of rhythm, and that carries over into their solo playing. So,
well, it was interesting. Is I was kind of one of my favorite things about doing these shows is I get a chance to do a little bit of background research, and so I watch through different
oh,
interviews and kind of learn stuff. And there's this wonderful interview that you did in Nashville. That you're on this couch in this lovely place. It was after a Nashville jam, and
mm-hmm,
and I can hear the click of the looper start, and you
mm-hmm.
play seamlessly and perfectly in time, and then you hear the click of the button of it's in loop mode, and I'm just like, it was so smooth. Did you spend a lot of time with the metronome or just playing with different drummers? What did you do to evolve your time?
You know, I never practiced with a metronome. Um, I should have. I played with records. I played with live drummers, and now I play with I program a lot of drums. Um, when I had my studio in Santa Fe, I used to sit down and loop a drum, record a drum groove and loop it and play to that. Especially when I would work with singer songwriters I'm producing, a lot of times I would lay down a basic feel of the song, 4 bars, and then use that as my guide. Especially with singer songwriters, sometimes it's hard for them to get in the vibe by playing just to a click. So having a drum groove, either I'll program it or I'll play it. When I have a kid, I'll play it live or best as I can and fix it, of course. But yeah, I really should have. I don't mean to sound like, oh, I never played with a metronome. You don't need to do that. It's just one of those things I should have done. Um, so I probably need to do it more. I do when I'm working on some things on my own. I might have the metronome the click up for a little bit, and if I can't figure out what the drum groove should be, I'll put the click up and play to that, and then I'll try and get the drum groove to feel right to get to the guitar part. But I should have played to click to a metronome much more. So I suggest everyone do that for a while. And playing with a drum groove or a feel or percussion groove or something like that is a good thing for working out song ideas and stuff like that. But you should work with a metronome, I think.
For me, actually, and I haven't had a chance to tell you this yet, but you've been a huge inspiration at a number of different levels. But as a streaming artist,
Oh,
um,
cool.
oh, hugely, honestly, you're one of the very first people to actually just embrace this as an art form, as an outlet for reaching people and to kind of meeting an audience and interacting with them. Was there a moment that you just kind of went, I'm going to do this? And did you have any mentors, or how did that whole process evolve?
I've been streaming for a little over 3 years now. It's probably 3.5 years. Um, it actually started in a weird way. I remember when someone said you could do Facebook Live, and I kept, you ever have things that you learn and they stick in the back of your mind, and you don't know why you just learned that, but later on you go, oh wait, I need to do this, and then all of that comes out. So I think the final thing was someone asked me to do a local gig, and it was on a Tuesday, and the money was really like, I don't really want to come out of my house. I'm not to say I'm motivated by money, but there's a lot of work involved, even if it's a close local gig. And there are a couple of times when I go down to a local place that I like, and I'll work on and work out ideas, and they let me just come in and do it. And I'm not even getting paid for that. But for this particular place asked me, and I was like, I bet I'm just going to stay home and stream, and I'll try the Facebook Live thing, and I'll reach more people. And I have, and from the beginning, it was like that. I can't play on a Tuesday night someplace and reach 2,000 people by the end of the night. I just don't have it like that. I can't go someplace and do that. But especially just from my room or wherever I am able to do it at. And I've been trying to stick to Tuesday nights at 9:00 Eastern time since I've been doing it. Took me a couple months to figure out the time slot, but that gave me enough time to start. And then if I run into any technical issues, I can still do it. And I've been able to do it at airports, at baggage claim, at the counters, in different countries, backyards, wherever. So it's an amazing platform to reach people and to just to get to do stuff. I mean, in the beginning it was my practice time. It was also to remind me that all right, I've been working on someone else's record for the last 3 days, and this day I've been working for 5 hours. I need to stop, set up, and get my mind back into my own songs and my own playing again. And actually, I had a conversation with a friend of both of ours, Steve Vai, about locking into having that sacred space and being able to just do what you do. And it was good. It was actually a great conversation with Steve to hear how he does it. And, everybody, his family knows he has that set time every day to do his thing. I don't have it every day, but I do it on Tuesdays and now on Sundays as well. So
That is the wisdom is dripping off of that. I'm just kind of letting it soak in. That's really hard. I mean, first of all, you're a working musician. One of the things I want to talk about, but I want to dig in on setting aside that time because I think,
okay.
one of the things that I love about your playing, again, I'm going to say that about 5 million times. So we'll be counting now that we'll get the love clock out. You always feel like you're in the moment. Like, I mean, it's really hard sometimes. Like, maybe, they lost your baggage at the airport or
that's happened.
or, your guitar got, I remember my very first tour, I get off the plane in, I don't know, Stockholm. Both guitars have been lost. And I'm like, this is the very beginning of my very first tour. It's like, and you're like, I may have a show tomorrow night, and I was playing 7-string at the time, and I will have no guitars, and I won't be able to find the guitars that I need to do the show. So I was like, I've got to figure this thing out. That said, one of my favorite things about being out on the road is the kindness of people on the road. So I'm curious. I bet you've got a couple of great stories of people who just kind of in the midst of your travels who are like, you know what, they showed you travel kindness. Are there any that jump out?
Oh, there's tons. There are absolutely tons. Uh, I use the Fractal audio stuff, the rack mount before, and the 3 now, and the FM3 and the AXA. And I was going to Arkhangelsk, Russia, to do a blues festival, basically 2 shows in 4 days, and it's really far. And I was also on tour in America with my trio, and I was basically took 4 days off, and flew to Russia to do the show. But I kept thinking, man, I don't really want to deal with customs and the axe effects and the guitars and stuff like that. But I did take a double gig bag with 1 guitar, a change of clothes. I had them put a toothbrush and socks and underwear on the rider. I think that's what it was. And I quickly typed on the Fractal forum. I said, anybody in Arkhangelsk, Russia happen to have an MFC 101 that I could borrow for a show? So I was just going to carry the guitar and the axe effects too. And this guy wrote back right away, yes, I have one. Contact the promoter and I'll bring it. So I contacted the promoter and I said, this guy, and the promoter knew him. I said, he's going to lend me his. Can you pay him as a rental? And he said, yes. I don't even know if that ever happened, but the guy was happy. And then I said, wait a minute. if he has a MFC FM 101, he's got an Axifex. So he said, I wrote him back. He said yes. So I borrowed his whole rig, and then I had to make sure the presets are compatible. Someone on the Fractal forum converted my presets to his unit. Then we need to test them. I was in Florida. I typed, and another guy brought over his rig. I wish I could remember his name. It was really cool. And he said that he bought his Axifex because of some demos he saw of me playing. But he brought over the old Axifex and the new one, and we tried the presets. We loaded my presets in both, and they worked. It was fine. I flew to Russia, got off the plane with just a gig bag, and showed up at the club, which was the first gig. The guy brought it in, plugged it in. He goes, "You should check it because the sound they sound kind of dark." I said, "I like my tones very dark." And I plugged in, hit one chord, and he goes, "That sounds like you." I said, "Yeah, it is. That's it." I was ready to go. Really kind of. I went to Korea last year, and the gentleman let me his AX8. Never met him before. He just came to the hotel, dropped off his AX8, and I had it for whatever the 3 days I was there. I just really, there's lots of stuff. I've borrowed guitars in different places. People have been really nice in general. I have no complaints about that.
I love it. So, do you miss the double neck ever? And do you still have that double neck S series guitar? Or that's actually an R, isn't it?
It's an R.
Do you still have that guitar?
Yes, I have a hard time lifting it. It's bigger than most double necks because the necks split apart. So, Mace Bailey made that double neck, and then I think Jim Donahue made the second one as a copy of it, a double of it. The neck, the 6-string neck on that belonged to Steve Vai. It was one of his. He had 3 before they did the 7-string. He had 3 D necks made up, so it goes past 0 fret. And the other 2, I believe, are on the heart-shaped guitar. Yes, the triple neck heart-shaped guitar. And then the other one wasn't being used, so they asked for permission if I can do it. I have it, and I actually mentioned it to Steve a couple of times in the last few years, and he didn't remember that there was another neck or whatever. So I don't know if he wants to. Yeah. But anyway, so I wrote a song. Actually, the first song on my record is written with that. So the open strings are a whole step lower, but then everything else is in the same spot, if that makes sense. And so I hadn't played that song in 25 years. And then Fractal came out with this thing called Virtual Capo, which I can change it. There's some other things that came out that you can do that with too, but I didn't have them. When the Virtual Capo came out, I was like, let me try it. So now I've been playing that almost every week on my Tuesday Night Lives, and I can't wait to play it live again because I was thinking, do I get an old school RG body and put that neck, because it's not one of the angled neck heels. It's one of the square neck heels from the original guitar. Was made in 1990 from the original heel joints on the Ibanez guitars. So I was gonna try and put it on a regular body and take that extra guitar for some shows, just so I could do that one song. But now I can do it with any of my guitars, so I'm happy about that. But yeah, I have the double neck. It's got a 12-string on the top. It's got the D neck on the bottom and edge 2 tremolo on it now, and it's got a switch between the 2 necks, and the input jacks, I believe, are on the side.
Actually, that's how I could tell it was the other guitar, but because the jack was on the side, it's an R and not an S.
Yes.
Very cool.
Yeah. It's a cool guitar. It just got really heavy after a while. When you're 26 and you're walking around, I could wear that guitar for almost a whole night. But no, not at 56. 55, going to be 56.
Let's see what we can pull up here. Hang on. Let's see if I can break this. Now I'm already up to breaking. Oh, look I got it in the first try. Look at that.
Very nice.
That is so unbelievably cool. So you're featured in the ad of the Low Pro Edge. Now, for those of us who actually remember the Low Pro Edge, that was a big big deal because the original Edge kind of came up and you had to get around the backside to get to the tuners. And
Hmm.
so the ability to have it closer to the body, less coming up off the body, that was pretty cool. So, and I love the zebra. So, do you have any of the zebra stuff hanging out? I mean, it was part of the mojo, right?
Yes, I do. You might want to switch to a different shot. I'll be right back.
Oh, okay. Hold on. Let's see. He's going for the mojo. Hang on. Let me know when you're ready, Larry. I do not have any zebras here, but I tell you what, I do have like an Ibanez, and oh, there we go. Come on, hang on a second. Bring it. That's what I'm talking. Oh, there we go. Come on.
Yeah. So I had one of these zebras. I used to play on stage, and I'd have all these stuffed animals on top of on the top of the cabinets. And when Bill Kaminsky, is it Bill Kaminsky? Yeah, I think it was no, Bill
Yeah.
Ryan. Sorry,
Bill
it
Ryan.
was Bill
Okay.
Ryan who was the art director. Uh, he said, yeah, just bring some stuff. And I showed up, and he had a bunch of the zebras there. So I took two more, and uh, and here's that heart shaped guitar,
That's
but in a
awesome.
smaller version. So I don't know which one is the D neck actually on Steve's. None of these are D necks technically, but it's probably this one. Probably the left handed version.
That's so cool.
But but yeah, I had the zebras and the white limo. I don't remember why the white limo was there. I think that was Bill Rhyme as well. Um, it was a fun shoot. It was done in Philadelphia, and it was cool. It's very cool.
So I guess that's a great segue into nags.
Uh-huh.
Those. Okay, first of all, Severin. Did I get that right, or did I Severn? Severn.
Seven.
So what is a
Mhm.
Severn exactly? And then your model is a Severn LM. Is that correct?
Yes. Um, the separate all the Nags guitars. Oddly, the Grammy I won is for engineering and producing a Native American record, and I lived in Santa Fe, New Mexico for 10 years, and I produced a lot of Native American artists and records, and so Nags, their guitars are named after Native American uh, waterways, rivers, and things in the Maryland, Virginia area. Maryland, Virginia, DC area. Um, so this is a Severn. Let's see, I can look that. And it's Joe's take, I think, on a 63 or a 64 Strat. Um, I should say it's his take and what he would do to make things better. I think it's got a to make it more modern. I should say, not better, modern. Um, It's got a 8.5 radius on the fingerboard, which was new to me, but very comfortable. Because I come from the Ibanez flat fretboards to with their 12s and 14s, and then the only things that had more of a radius, a curved radius was my tellies that I use on records, and I have a couple Les Pauls for recording and stuff. It's 22 frets, which I love because I like where the neck pickup sits. This this plate is what holds the tremolo on the top, and the springs hold it in the back. And that plate helps with sustain, kind of like transfer sustain to the top of the wood. It transfers more than just a few screws on the, you know what I mean, on as post. Um, it's got a great neck joint. It's got the vintage but locking tuners. And just unbelievably great playing guitar, and they're beautiful. They're Joe makes what I call absolutely beautiful pieces, playable pieces of art. I should say that. When I first went to Joe, we had a great conversation for a long time. And then he said, do you want to check out some of the guitars? You want to play them? I said, yes. And he let me play every guitar that was pretty much assembled. And, it's a small company that was, at the time, most of the guitars that were there were custom ordered. So I'm playing carefully not to damage any. Yeah. But there were several of the guitars that were not necessarily what I would go for or my thing for like the live thing, but they all were great. I was like, wow, this is great. This is not really my thing, but this is great. And the Severns stuck out. The Chenas stuck out. Now I have a couple more models and stuff that I have that are just really great guitars. Absolutely great. And Joe, I don't know if you know Joe's history.
So,
You know Joe's history?
so I actually, again, I love, the interesting thing is when you start to study an artist, because invariably we're going to go back to meeting at that first NAMM show, which you were there at the Ibanez booth, and I actually tried to find some photos, and I couldn't find any photos, but it would have been in the '90s,
Yeah.
and you were playing at the Ibanez booth. But the thing is you know somebody, how do you say, socially, right? But then you start to kind of find out stuff. So I love the fact. I'll unpack a little bit of it, and I'll let you fill in the details that I get wrong. But Joe Nags was the guy that ran the custom shop, and actually in that same video from Nashville, there was a woman who brought you her deceased father's guitar to play, and it was actually a guitar that he had crafted. So there's kind of this
Yeah.
lovely lineage of his instruments coming in your hands. You're going, I feel a connection with that. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, it's a little bit like a Leo Fender sort of story where Leo would actually give guitars, or guitars would come into people's lives that Leo had directly been in contact with. In fact, I'm going to confuse the story maybe, but and I may have it wrong, but David Gilmour has Strat 000 or 001, and unless I'm crossing the wires, which I do from time to time, that was a guitar that lived in Leo's office for a while, because of course
Wow.
it was, yeah. So how did you what was, first of all, you were with Ibanez for quite some time, but you're also a guitar collector. So what was it like, kind of making the journey into Nagsville?
Um, well, a few years ago, you and I both turned 50,
Not long ago.
and 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 6 years
Shh.
ago. um, and let's see, how do I put this? There have been lots of changes at Ibanez. I was with Ibanez since 1988. And it was a long time. I had really great, absolutely great times there, and some great memories with some wonderful people. And there was a shift. There were some things that happened that were different. And I said, I'm turning 50. I have a couple of Pauls. I have a couple of Tellys. By the way, for recording and production, you can find a spot for a Telly on any song, any record. It's absolutely, I don't, yeah, I rarely play them outside the house, but you can find a spot. When you're reaching the overdub, reach for a Telly because it will fit on any track. Yeah, that's nice. That's nice. That's nice.
Oh, yeah.
So I decided that I was going to play some of those guitars. I've been playing Ibanez guitars exclusively for 26 years, I guess. And I said, I'm going to play some other guitars, some of the guitars I have. And that was the thing. And I spoke to to Michael Rigo, who was the new artist relations guy. And he said, yeah, a lot of people are doing that, especially in country music and stuff. People playing Les Paul, Strats, Tellys, Paul Reed Smiths and stuff. And I was content with that. I talked to some of the other guitar players that I know that are doing big shows, tours and stuff. And everything was fine. I do love guitars. I like going to guitar factories and tours. And every year I go to Maryland, and I do a little master class in either production or guitar or both at Montgomery College in Rockville, Maryland. And I said, I'm going to be near PRS. I'd love to get like just a factory tour of PRS. And so a friend of ours called them or sent them an email, and I didn't get any response. And then he called them and still didn't get a response. I was like, all right, don't worry about it. Maybe they're busy, whatever. I just wanted a factory tour. I wasn't looking for any guitars or anything. And at the last minute, I remembered that my local guitar hero in Far Rockaway, Queens, was Steve Stevens, and still one of my favorite guitar players. And I just I'd seen a video of Steve talking about his new guitar and his new guitar company. And so I contacted Steve, and Steve wrote the nicest email letter that you could ever hope for. And again, I wasn't looking for a guitar, but he wrote the nicest message to Joe and to Peter Wolf. And Peter was out of town. Joe was like, "Yeah, come on down. You want to come by?" And so he gave me a tour of the factory. And again, we hit it off and just started talking. He's really a great guy, and he knows his stuff about guitars. So he, I believe, created the private stock program, the custom shop APRS. And then the current NAGS team, unless someone's changed, all are the original private stock maker. So they made all this super high-end boutique, if you want to have boutique guitars for a boutique company. And Joe just knows his stuff about building guitars. And look at that.
So that's actually a new Chinese SE hollow body piezo 2 or SE hollow body 2 piezo. And it's actually a veneer, but you know, the finish work, I mean, you know how, okay, you're a guy that knows video, right? And you want the guitar to sound great, but in video, when you pull out a guitar, like you're like, hey, whoa, what is that? The finish on this guitar is just like, it is, I'd have to say it's probably, the Woody is really good on film, but this guitar is great on film. You're like, oh, what is that, right? And now, I should know this, so I apologize. Wait a second, hang on. Maybe I can save myself here. Hang on a second. Let's see if we can do this and not break the internet. Nope. Okay, hang on. Let's do this. Hang on. Breaking the internet already. Hold on. There we go. That should have gone to that. Let's see if I did. There we go. All right, so your model doesn't have an F-hole, but one of the ones that you've got does have an F-hole. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yes, I get it.
So, oh, great. Yes. So, you know, the funny thing is that, hi. So the funny thing is that, you know, you kind of think of an F-hole on a guitar, you know, being kind of, you know, metal reformed guy. And I was like, I didn't necessarily get it. I didn't have hollow bodies growing up. I wanted stuff that, you know, solid body, you know, you wouldn't get the hollow body feedback. But when you feel the air that comes through an F-hole, it's a pretty special thing. Is it not, Sir Larry?
Oh, it's great. It's a different vibe. This guitar is my model, but it's a semi-hollow. And all I can say, it's more round. Get a roundness to it, sound-wise.
That's gorgeous. And I love the fish on the neck there. Of course, that's a joke, of course, because the funny thing is that it's the Larry icon, which I absolutely love, by the way. But in one of the videos that I was watching, you're saying, people say, "Oh, I really like the fish on the neck there," and you're like, "That's me." So
it's a fish or a plane to some people.
So that's a gorgeous finish. So, you know, as you're, hang on, there we go. And I love the kind of the I guess it's just a multi-laminate with different stains. So that whole kind of.
It's not a laminate, actually. It's a thick piece of maple on top.
So they carved it in stages and stained it in stages.
Yes.
That's nuts. And is that mahogany that the body is?
It is alder. So my model is usually alder in the back and a thick maple top. It's I used to have a picture of what it looks like with but it's really a thick piece of maple on the top.
And you were using the Satch track, is that correct? Or at least in one of the guitars, is that still kind of your go-to neck pickup?
It's not the neck. I use the Satch track neck pickup, but in the back. Yeah, and all my models. That's what's in my model guitars.
So
And then the neck and the neck in the middle are DiMaggio Area 67s.
so are we going to sing Steve Blucher praise now? Is it that moment?
I called Steve and I said, "Hey, Joe Nags is going to build me a guitar, and there's a couple of things. He does this with the humbuckers as well, but you lose that plate, and so there's a smaller plate on here. And he says, if you're a humbucker guy, you should just go with the humbucker. But every guitar, every Severn that I played that had a single coil in the back, there was something special about the sustain, even unplugged. And and that was one of the things that made me really like it. So I didn't want to just go, all right, that's one of the things I like about it, but I'm not going to do that on the guitar I'm going to play. So I wanted to keep that. So I was asking Steve Blucher about Andy's pickup, about a couple other ones, and he knows Steve's known me. I've been with DiMaggio since '85.
Hold on, say that again. Say the name.
DiMaggio.
No, that's not what you said. That was the New
DiMaggio.
York creepy. I love it.
Yeah, it comes out every now and then. Since 1985, and Steve Blucher has made some pickups for me, and he knows what I like and what I don't like. And he says, I got a pickup that I think you're going to like, but I'm going to recommend that you put the neck pickup in the back. And it worked. Even, when Joe finished the guitar, he told me, he goes, yeah, I put those pickups in. And I think you made a good choice. He really dug the back pickup. And Joe's like into boutique, like really boutique pickups. Which great, but he was like, yeah, I think the backup pickup sounds great. And a lot of people that have bought my model guitar have contacted me and said they really enjoyed the pickup choices that are in the guitar. So yeah, it's a stack track neck pickup in the bridge.
That's a really interesting, because the bridge, a narrow aperture pickup in the bridge can be bright. So that's a really crafty approach. That's very clever.
It works for me.
So is the bridge pickup plate a little bit of take on a telly as well? The way it's kind of
absolutely. That's Joe's thing. So the guitar is like a lot of the things about the guitar of this guitar is kind of Strat-like, but then more a modern Strat, I should say, but or a modern vintage modern. There you go. But that plate thing is definitely a telly influenced. So it's cool.
All right. All right, we're going to geek out on some more gear here for a second. And I don't know how this photo is going to come through because it is not necessarily the perfect photo dimension. But you know what? We're going to live dangerously. Let's see what happens here. Okay, I'm going to need to expand this. Is that what I'm going to need to do?
Okay.
Yeah, there we go. Let's see if that works. There we go. I think that's better.
Oh, man, I could have taken some pictures for you.
Oh, I tell you what, I'll be right over. So, oh, come on. Oh, I got to pull it up. That's the deal. Fine. There we go. All right. So I spy some lovely amps there. So, and just a few pedals there, Larry. So care to run us through kind of some of the gems that are there? First of all, I think I read that your Marshall is a 73. Let's start there. How did that amp come into your life?
That amp belonged to my friend Phil Risen. Philip Risen, or Philip Noodleman. He sang and used that he sang in a version of Foghat. He played rhythm guitar and sang in Foghat when the singer left. So he has a couple of those Marshalls, and I've had it for a long time. In the 80s, I had a white Marshall 200 watt PA head that I have no idea where it is. I wish I knew where it was. Just unbelievably loud. I could never use it. And then, in the 80s, we played loud. In fact, now with this amp, this is 100 watt. I remember playing in a club and turning around going, I need to turn up, and go, it's on 7. Oh no, can't turn it up anymore. And now I can't. I'm like, if it's on 2, I'm like, no. Can't do it. But it's a great sounding head, and that's what I use at the model that I use in the fractal. I use the 1987 X Jump Plexi. So I mean, it's pretty close to that. And then a friend of mine who had gotten on my case for about 4 years, he would come to see me play live, and he's a producer engineer in Nashville, and he would come to see me play live. He goes, "Man, your sound's great, your tone is great, it's really cool. What are you using?" I tell him, and he goes, "Okay." And then every now and then we'd have a conversation without playing. He goes, "Yeah, so when are you going to start using real amps again?" I'm like, "But you like the?" He goes, "Oh yeah, that's right. I like your sound live." And then so I would tell him about it. Then I stopped telling him that he should look at modelers and other alternative things. And he joined a country band and was traveling and touring and dealing with the inconsistencies of flying and backline and he called me up one day and he goes, "What's the thing you use?" And I said, "Why?" He goes, "Well, I need to do something different." So I took him to meet. I knew that he wasn't. First of all, it's a great time to be a guitar player. The technology is just insane, and I knew that he wasn't necessarily a fractal guy. I don't think he's a fractal guy. I didn't think he was a Line 6 guy. I said he's probably a Kemper guy. So I came to Nashville, I picked him up, and we went to see Michael Britt. If you don't know Michael Britt, you should look him up. He's a guitar player in Lone Star. He's a ridiculous player, and he's making some great Kemper profiles. And so my friend played his rig, and we talked to Michael. He gave him a great run through, and my friend said, "All right, I'm gonna buy a Kemper." So he bought a Kemper, and he called me up, goes, "It sounds good. It's close. It's not quite there." I said, "Make your own profiles." He goes, "But Michael's," I said, "Make your own profiles. You don't know where all the profiles come. If you know how to use, if you have great amplifiers, you know how to get the sound out of those great amplifiers, how you like it, you should make your own profiles." So he did. And then 2 days later, he called me up and goes, "I'm selling all my amps." I go, "Don't sell all your amps. But, I'm glad that you like it." He goes, it's absolutely perfect for him. So he was going to get rid of a Fender Tremolux, which I was not even aware of. It's a 64 Tremolux. And it's one of the rare ones with EL84s, which I love EL84s. And so he
wait. A Fender with EL84s?
It's a rare 1964. It has EL84s. I'm 100%. I'm 99% positive.
No, I'm with you, but that's like a Fender with that tube set. That's a very unique amp.
Well, but
that's awesome.
My favorite, how I learned that I love EL84s is in the mid 90s. I was living in a small apartment in Manhattan with my girlfriend at the time, and the apartment was tiny. I couldn't have a lot of gear in there, and a lot of stuff was in storage. And someone called me up to do a gig real quick. And I had to run to Sam Ash and temporarily buy a small amp. I had a memory man and a tube screamer, and I loved the amp so much. I went back and I said I want to keep the amp, and so I bought the amp, and it was like $200. It was really inexpensive. It's the little Fender Pro Juniors. It's one volume, one tone, 110-inch speaker. I got a tweed one because that's what they had. And then later on, when I lived in San Diego, I got a second one, and I gigged in San Diego with a pedal board and that instead of my big, too heavy to carry around 16 space shock mount rack with a 2290 and Boogie quad preamp and all the other the stuff from the 80s, and I love that. That's out, and I learned that not all Fenders were created equal. So there's some great sound Fenders, but my ears perk up when I hear EL84s for a clean sound. And so that amp has the EL84s in it, and I'm like, all right, I'm totally digging it.
I love it. Digging it. So do you mind if, I hope nobody's going to mind, one of the things that I did, I've got this application called 4K Video Downloader, and I am dangerous because I'll be nabbing stuff left and right. But I found one of my favorite things. Here we go again. Actually, this time I didn't say one of the things I love about you. One of my favorite things is the depth of your tones. It's just like, it's kind of like it's this well, but it's like, they talk about what were the beer commercials? Artesian well water. Like I think they made the phrase up, like who knows what an artesian is and who knows if they have wells there, but it sounded good. But the layers of sound and fidelity that you get are amazing. So I'm going to pull up, and I hope nobody minds. I don't think they will. It's about 4 minutes of Larry actually, and you recently did. Let me see if I can remember. Quarantined. So you did a live stream with the Eventide folks, with some of the
Oh, yeah.
other folks, and you're an H9, multiple H9 user. Actually, you're like Larry's dangerous because he's not going to just have you buy one H9. He's going to have you buy an FM3, an AXFX, and you're going to get not just one H9. You're going to have to get two. So the thing is. I want to play this clip of Larry at the Eventide booth. It's about 4 minutes. I am indulging myself as much as anybody that's watching, but this is worth loving and embracing. So here we go.
Oh wow.
That's what I'm talking about. Woo! Yeah.
That was NAM was fun, man. It was so weird that that was 7 years ago, wasn't it? The last NAM show.
Yeah.
Anyway, um, yeah, it was it was a really good time. It was a good NAM show. You know, I got really sick right after that. Like the week after NAM, I was spent in Phoenix in my friend's guest house, sick as can be.
I caught Namthrax in the worst way too. I came back and basically
Yep.
spent 2 weeks horizontal.
Hmm.
Just like,
Hmm.
yeah, it was bad. And I actually thought I had, but I
Yeah.
didn't. But it was bad. So, hey, so, all right. What do you do to stay inspired?
Stay inspired.
Yeah.
Uh, hmm. I, I I love music. Um, you might have to be more specific as to what level inspired. I'm always inspired to do music. Sometimes I get to a point where like um, working on either my own stuff or working on other artists' stuff, where I'm not sure where to go next. And what I do then is I do mundane tasks. So I come into the studio and I'll start backing up hard drives, and then my next step will be to go through, like every software synth has a favorites folder. Um, so I will get a MIDI part going, and then I'll just click through sounds, and I go, oh, I like that sound, I like that sound, and then I'll put those sounds that I like and that I love into a favorites folder, and then I might just play guitar through one of my rigs or something like that, and just and try twisting knobs and seeing what comes out there. But I'm always inspired to pick up the guitar and to play or other instruments. And back to what you were talking about with the wood of the guitar of your PRS there. I think it's important to always get back to that moment of why you started playing guitar. And one of those things, you remember when you first got your guitar, and every time you opened that case, there was that moment. It was the angels came out singing, and the lights beamed and hit it, and you're just like, that's mine. That guitar is mine. I'm gonna pick it up and I'm gonna play it. And I don't want to lose that. That I never want to lose. So, you know.
That's awesome. And the reason I ask that is I think, um, it's hard sometimes to stay, you know, in some respects, I liken, playing guitar at a certain level to being a peak performance athlete. And all peak performance athletes, have Super Bowl Sundays. And then there's some
Hmm.
Sundays where they show up and their game just isn't happening, but yet, and I find it a bit challenging at times to, on days when I know I'm not at my peak,
Uh huh.
to feel I need to perform at my peak. So it's just it's just one of the things that I come up against with sometimes, and it's just I know that there's ebb and flow to it. The other thing that I have discovered on the days when I'm sucking, if I stick at it, about 4 hours later, that breakthrough that you get to is enormous. So,
Yeah, but you never suck at it. You definitely
oh,
never suck at it.
oh,
I will say, what's been a blessing, and at first what didn't seem like a blessing is that so I don't really consider myself in the shred category. I did an instrumental record because I had an instrumental band because we couldn't find a singer. Back in New York, looking for a singer that could sing, could write, wasn't on drugs, and wasn't a raging alcoholic, was a real a challenge at a time. Um, and So I got tired of waiting, and I said, let's just go play the stuff. Instrumental music was rocking at the time, so I'm just gonna play the song. So I started writing stuff that could go have words or could survive without words. Um, but when I started touring with Tracy Chapman and Billy Squire, Rick Ocasek, and then a slew of singer songwriters. Um, with Tracy, I did maybe 4 solos a night. With Billy, a few more. Billy took some great solos. With a lot of the singer songwriters I played with, I was the texture guy, atmosphere. So it wasn't really about soloing. So that stuff, um, I can wake up and play without warming up because it's more of a mental state of like, because when you put tons of reverb on and then delay and then chorus and some more reverb and then multiplex delay and other stuff like that, the more stuff you put on like that, the less notes you have to play, or you can get away with playing because it'll just get too muddy. Um, so that's me thinking in a different way, and it's not so much about like having the super finesse technique. Um, when I started doing, that's why I said before when I started doing the Tuesday nights, Tuesday Night Lives, that I needed to get back in that space of like, oh man, playing all these notes and playing solos in every song. It's a different feeling, and it's a different, I have to warm up. I really have to warm up, and to be able to do that. And now I'm playing, because it's the 30th anniversary of my first record. I'm playing a lot of the songs on the first record, which were written from a 26-year-old point, a 24 to 26-year-old perspective. And it's like, why did I write this song this fast? And why is this look here? Oh no, I'm changing that, because there's stuff you do for different reasons at that age than you do now. And so I have to warm up now to be in that space as a solo artist. But as a sideman, it's a different perspective. And at first I was like, every now and then I would go to an NAMM show and I'd be on stage, or like I did the Ibanez 100th anniversary with check this order out. Andy Timmons, one of my top two favorite guitar players in the world. Andy Timmons, Marty Friedman, Paul Gilbert, who was just insane technically. I mean, insane period, but technically insane. Then Steve Vai, and then myself. And I just, as they're soloing, I kept going, who made this order? Who can we change this order now? I mean, and where do you put yourself in that order? But all those guys have been doing what they do since the beginning. And I have big gaps of not playing anything remotely like that at all, or like my first record or second record. My third record was an acoustic record. And then there's a lot of like singer-songwriter records in there, and playing with singer-songwriters where you can't do that stuff. You shouldn't do, you really shouldn't do that stuff. So it's a different perspective. So I never, only when I'm like getting ready to do my thing, I'm like, oh, I got to practice. I got to be in shape. And then I have to get it out of my head, and I have to go, this is where I'm at, because your mind can mess you up. This is where I'm at technically right now, but music is not technical, right? You always want to make music. So you should always make music up to the ability that you have efficiency on your instrument. And if you just don't have that crazy technique that day, change the approach. Make music, because the people listening want to hear music, not necessarily want to hear you practice. So as long as I can keep that in my mind, then I'm good. And as long as I practice, then I can do both. And when I will say, when I'm well warmed up, it is freer to do. I do play less when I want to, and I play more when I do want to, and I ramp up. When I'm not practiced and not warmed up, and I'm not in the right headspace, the whole time I'm trying to get back up there, and I'm really practicing in front of everybody. I'm trying to get back to that spot, which I shouldn't be doing in the first place. I should be playing music and making the best music I can at that moment with the technical ability I have at that moment. That's just my take on it.
Oh boy, there's so much meat on those bones. I want to chop that in a million pieces, and I'm going to run with the first one.
Okay.
We both had the experience, and I'm sharing this. I once got accused of humble bragging. That was like a dagger in the heart. I was like, I asked my wife, like, I thought I knew what it meant, and I was like, what does that mean? She said, yeah, it meant what you thought it meant. I was like, oh, But we had an experience at the G4 in Palm Springs where Joe was like, hey, you know what I'm going to do is, like, the first night, I'm going to have kind of all the guest folks, instead of kind of doing the who's on first base, that is to say, who's soloing first, who's at the end of the line, where are you in that? Sorry, let me back up a step. what Larry was talking about a minute ago is one of the most uh, exciting, amazing, terrifying, test your confidence and your capacity experiences when there's a whole row of people that can outplay you any day of the week. And I'm not speaking for you. I'm saying that
No.
people, and you're just
Yeah.
kind of, you're going like, you've it's like you're underwater. The door of the shark cage has opened, and you've decided to go for a little swim, because you know at any moment they could just devour you. But the experience is actually going, okay, because and I've shared this a couple of times. The voice in my head, it starts by the side of the stage, like, is tonight the night that they're going to find out that you're a fraud? Is tonight the night that you're going to suck? And just like all these people see, and it's all going to be on iPhones. It's going to be all over the internet. And I'm just like, I'm not listening. Literally, there's a volume control in my. I can hear the words, but the emotion, I just go, I'm just not buying I'm not taking the bait. I'm sorry. But so this time though, what was really the curveball Joe threw was like, you guys are all going to play my guitar through my rig.
Yeah.
So like,
No, we didn't play.
yeah,
Guitar.
no, we did.
We played Joe's guitar.
We played Joe's.
No.
Yes, we did. So he lined us up, and we all played Joe's guitar one at a time. So that way, it didn't turn into 20 minutes and 30 minutes of noodle. So the thing is that it's somebody else's guitar. It's somebody else. It's Joe Satriani's guitar. It's Joe Satriani's rig. So now all of a sudden the bar has gotten that much higher because he's just finished, doing the magic. He goes, here it is, So it's an interesting thing. So, no matter what type of jam session, like you made this allusion to this thing of being really young, and I remember going to a jam session in my 20s, in Marin, just like. And so this guy handed me a Telecaster. I remember the drummer saying to me afterwards, like, you're not supposed to play a Telecaster like that, right? It's like that.
Unless you're Jeff Beck.
Unless you're Jeff Beck, right? So I'm curious, walking into that situation. So it's the 100th anniversary. And by the way, you didn't mention it, but I know that was Simon Phillips on drums.
Oh, dude. Wait. What's even more terrifying? So Simon took over because we were all of us trying to solo. And it was chaos. And Simon did one of the things that I do, like when at the Vi Academy and the G4 experience, which I get all these guitar players on stage. But I'm like, you got to either come up with a rhythm part and a rhythm tone or don't play. And Simon said, all right, nobody play rhythm except Larry. And I was like, what? And there are three drummers. So every guitar player shifts, a drummer shifts as well. So I'm now holding down the rhythm for four other guitar players through three drummers. And each drummer is playing the same groove, but they all have a slight different feel to it. And you don't want to be messing up when Simon's playing, and I'm just trying to lock into the groove. I'm like, how did this happen? And it was one of those moments where you kind of go, oh, this is going to be cool. And then as it's going on, you're going, wait, how did this happen? Who picked this order? And why am I the only one playing? Lock into Simon, keep it funky, what am I going to play? Lock into Simon. And then Steve Vai does he's right before me. He does this amazing solo, waves his hands in the air and passes it off to me. I have to now change tone and start soloing. And Steve comes up and standing next to me saying the most encouraging, great things in my ear. But it's like, please stop. It's Steve Vai, it's just like, and then I got to go. And then when I finish, I'm handing it off to Andy Timmons, who's just going to play amazing stuff. But I have to lock back in with whoever's playing drums. And I'm not even sure who's playing drums. I have to think about it for a second, look over and go, who's playing drums? But yeah, I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Simon Phillips, yes.
You set me up for a nice segue. So what do you say we go here? Oh, okay. So you made him work for his lunch money, my friend. Like that was so great
I don't
to
know.
watch him kind of go, okay, all right, I'm gonna have to earn my lunch money for this one. That was lovely, just lovely.
It was great. I always love playing with Steve. I get away, like, uh, he brings out something in me that lets me play whatever the imagination's just wide open. And then I think that I what are the things that I like to do that I whenever I jam with Steve is I try and make it funky. Somehow it's going to end up funky, and I think Steve likes that. Um, I know Philip Bino's always behind me. Go, yeah, it's funky, So it's cool. Um, yeah, and Jeremy's all like that too. So I like them with those guys. And Dave Wynn's been a big help because one time I got on stage with Steve at a show, and Steve was just making something up, and I was like, Dave, I have the foggiest clue as what key we are in, and so Dave said something, and I was like, yeah, that doesn't help me, and I think he played something real quick on the guitar, or he explained it somehow really quick that was like, oh, Dave's a great teacher. He explained something real quick to me, and I was like, okay, I got it, I understand it now. So. But yeah, it's great playing with Steve. It's really great. You never know where it's going to go or what's going to happen, and love it, love it. We need to get on stage and play.
We do, and we had a little bro moment at was it at Joe's camp? And
Yeah,
you actually the act of kindness you brought me, because my favorite thing is I hang out with the beginning and intermediate students, because
yeah,
if I were a beginning and intermediate student who showed up at a Vi Academy or G4, I would be like, what was I thinking? Except for the fact that it's an amazing, embracing atmosphere. But like,
yeah,
we're mature players, and I'm not going to speak for you, but when you go into that environment, you're always kind of like, I'm practiced up, I showed up prepared, but I still, I know that, I want to do well, right? Here's the thing, I care to do well, right? And there are
hmm
certain environments where you care to do the best well you possibly can. You want to come in bringing
yeah,
the stuff that people expect, and they want, as you said, they want to have a great experience. They want to be entertained and whatnot. Are you not entertained? So, but you came in and you had pizza. So it's like midnight, and I'm sitting here by the bar, and I've been giving these like micro private lessons, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. The poor kid who bought this guitar, I'm not going to mention the brand, it was a 7 string, and it was the worst guitar I've seen in 5 years. Like the
ooh,
intonation, the notes that would go dead when you bend. And I'm trying not to go. Well, the problem's not you; it's the fill in the blank brand guitar that you've got, and
hmm
and it's not helping. And it almost sounded like, you ever have a humbucker where one of the coils goes out, or it's just
yeah,
wired backwards, and you're just like, it's just sucking at every sound that's making. And I'm like, I can't say your guitars. I actually said, there may be something up with the wiring on your guitar. You might want to check it out. So you come in and you've got pizza, and you gave me some pizza. And at this point, I'm famished. And you're like, oh, have some. So that was an act of road kindness that I shall not soon forget. but we got a chance to play, and one of the things that I so look forward to that is the vibe of how you know I think actually you said it that's really powerful is the journey you take with some of the other guitars and where they
Mhm.
take you means when you come back to the shredder version of your inner self, like listening to you play the blue notes, what Steve did when he heard that, he was like, oh, and the great thing about music, and the next question I was going to ask you about was inspiration in terms of staying in a place where you're able to improvise. Because the neat thing is you guys weren't playing Paul Gilbert lick number 1A. You guys were just kind of going, hey, let me pull that down. So I'm curious, kind of what have you done if there's a conscious or an unconscious process of kind of getting into that improvised, because when you're producing an artist, and by the way, congratulations on the Grammy, that's
Thank you.
that is awesome. As oh, wait a second, hang on, no, wait, yeah, yeah, oh, there we go, hang on, woo, there we go. Come on, ladies and gentlemen, that's pretty cool. Do you ever pick the thing up at night and just cradle it just a little bit, just kind of nice Grammy, good Grammy? I mean, do you ever just kind of like dance around? I'm sorry, I'm having fun. Hopefully not at your expense. Dance around. It's like my Grammy.
I
Sorry.
probably did that when I first won it, but I haven't done that in a long time. But it's cool. It's very cool.
So
Hmm.
the great thing is in that situation. It's actually one of the reasons, of many reasons, people love having you around. Is you actually can just dig in at the moment and get there. Is that just it's natural? But have you done anything to develop it, or have you just tried to stay out of the way of letting it develop itself?
Um, y- you know, the concept of improv really is the same as the concept of communication. And when I would teach, I would always say that you want to learn your vocabulary. You want to learn some words. You want to learn some sentences. You want to learn how to form sentences. But there's a difference between speaking with your friends and just chatting about a subject and listening and then replying to what was just said as opposed to reading a speech. And when you read a speech, you're reading it word for word, and you're talking. And you might have a couple moments where you can go, "Oh, I just said that line. Let me elaborate on that." Or someone asks a question and elaborate. But improv is just basically picking a topic, and then calling upon everything that you have built up to that moment in communication, and letting it flow out in the subject, not necessarily saying, "Oh, all right, I learned this diminished lick. Let me stick this diminished lick in." If the what's coming up doesn't build up to the diminished lick, doesn't make it's not music. It's just saying, "Oh, I can do this lick. I can do this scale. I can do that. I can do that. I can do that." That I think when you first start improving, that's the first approach. Is like, I've learned how to do this scale and this lick and this and that. And well, let me do this. Let me do that. Let me do this. Let me do that. Um, but at some point, you want it to be off the top of your head. It's still accurate, but you're not necessarily thinking about what lick to do or what to do. You're thinking. I think that you're thinking, what emotion do you want to bring out, and it's all together. Like when you're speaking, you don't think, "Oh, let me use this word." You know, you might go searching for the word and go, "Oh, I can't figure what word was I going to use." But you don't say, "Oh, I learned this great word in English class. Let me just stick that in." Um, you have a vocabulary in your head, and you find different ways to get your point across. Does that make any sense?
That makes a great amount of sense because the idea is when you're lick hunting, you actually see it in jam sessions. There's two types of jammers.
Hmm.
The one when they're not playing, you can tell they're thinking about the next thing they're going to play and they're totally not listening to anything that's going on around them.
Yeah.
Or I can say there can be the listening as you're kind of like, I'm listening going, what the flip am I going to play now? But then there's the person that's watching what's going on because they got to read the room. Like the
Yeah.
real improvisationalist has to know that the thing that they would have played the last cycle ain't going to probably work the next cycle. The room it's gone around. The sun has
Yeah.
made its rotation. I guess the Earth, yeah. So the point being is that it's no longer the same day it was, and
Yeah.
it's moved forward. And more importantly, the great thing, and that was what was neat about watching you and Steve, there was a little mimicry, but then there wasn't.
Hmm.
It was actually it was so disjoint in a lovely way that you kind of went, let's do this. Now we're going to do this. And then we're going to do this. And it was beautiful because you were very clearly listening to what each other was mapping, but then going, okay, I'm going to break out and then I'm going to come back in. It was masterful. So,
You have to listen, especially when you jam or you get invited on stage to jam with a band and stuff like that. If you're not listening, if you're just thinking about what are you going to play, nobody in that band wants you to come back ever again on stage. It's because it's part of a whole. You want to get on stage and leave it at least sounding as good as it was before you got on the stage. If you can add something to it, find a spot, go, oh, no one's doing this, and this will actually help the groove a little bit. I'm gonna find that spot and live in there until I can find another spot to help make things good. If you can't contribute to it in a positive way, stop. Turn down, figure out what you can do, and to be supportive. And then when it's your spot to play, again, the same thing. You still want to add to the whole thing. You don't want to detract from it. I think, and that's what you shoot for. Some you don't always get it, but that's what you shoot for.
what about this? Oh, wait. No, you need to be big over here. Wait a second. No. There we go. That do it. There we go. Dude,
That's the double neck.
look at that. It's a flipping cassette J card. I about flipped when I saw it. I'm like, I love this. So, all right. So, I need to unpack this for a couple of folks here. So, they used to have these things called CDs. And before they had the CDs, they had these things called cassettes. And they had LPs, and you might have seen them. They look a little bit like a Frisbee. But inside the cassette, again, let's see if I can do this without breaking the internet. They had these things called the J card. Because if you look at it, if you kind of fold up the short side there, it looks a little bit like the letter J. And so that's why they call them a J card. So I saw it, I'm like, oh, this is awesome. So the interesting thing is, like that first label that you're on, there were some pretty heavy cats, like Brian Auger. And like I was reading through the label roster, I'm like, oh, that's like a pretty serious deal for a first instrumental record. Can you unpack kind of how that whole thing came together?
I'm still not sure. Fernando Saunders was on that label. They found me through someone. I was playing in Manhattan a lot, playing the Cat Club, and it would be large crowds there and stuff. And they wanted to put another instrumental record out. They had a couple other artists on that were instrumental, and we went for it. Yeah, it was an interesting time in New York. Very interesting time.
So, what I was fascinated by is you did the New York thing because you're from there.
Mm-hmm.
Then you made the pilgrimage to the coast, but to San Diego, not Los Angeles. So why San Diego? What brought you to San Diego?
Actually, so in I think it was '95. There was a series of 13 snowstorms in New York City, and every one of those storms I had a gig, and they were all canceled. And the last one was that people were skiing down Fifth Avenue because it was that much snow. And my girlfriend at the time came home. She goes, "I got a couple of job offers, but I know how much you love it in New York." I was like, "Where did you get a job offer?" And she told me the first place. I was like, "Oh, okay." Second place, oh, and she goes, "In San Diego." I'm like, San Diego. That's awesome. The weather in San Diego is amazing. And I think we moved to San Diego within a month. And it was really cool. It was a good, I think back now, it was a good a good time for me musically because the first few gigs there were magical. I put together a band by accident. I got the first gig by accident, which was opening it for Robin Ford. The second gig was even more of an accident. That was opening for Robin Trower, I think. And the third gig was really magical because Eric Johnson was in town, and I was like, I'd love to open up for Eric Johnson. I hadn't met him yet then, and through a weird thing, I got called. A friend of mine got called to play at this promoter's house for a party as a single, and he said, "You want to come just play with me?" So I went and played, and it was the big promoter, Bill Silver, and he was the one who brought Eric Johnson for that show. He goes, I hear you play. I was playing acoustic guitar. He goes, I hear you play electric. Do you want to open for Eric Johnson? I'm like, sure. and of course, when I showed up with a 5-piece band, they thought I was just doing a single, just me. But Eric was really nice. He even they didn't have enough channels on the board for the whole band, but he had them pull out his extra monitor, backup monitor board, and we plugged the band into that, and then 2 channels out of that into the main house board. But that was a great time for me because I got to, with this great band, it was James East, who's Nathan East's brother. Nathan East is, just look him up, and James as well. And a couple of different drummers, Bill Ray, who now plays with Paul Gilbert. But after Bill Ray was Charlie George. And then Martin Greaves on keyboards, and Adrian Nims on flute and saxophone sometimes, and then Monette Marino on percussion. We played a lot in San Diego, and that's when I had the 2 little amps and the pedal board, and whatever I needed to work out, I worked out. I progressed a lot musically in that time period, from playing as a sideman and to also doing my stuff, because I was still doing my stuff. It was we had weekly gigs. I was transitioning because there was more money in I sound like I'm always looking for money, but you got to survive. There was more money in doing these smooth jazz gigs on the West Coast, so which I wasn't even trying to do, but the local radio DJs came to me once and said, "Hey, could you play this show at this club? It's like a happy hour thing with your band, and could you possibly maybe play, like, beef up some of your acoustic songs and tone down some of your electric songs?" I said, "Well, I have electric songs that aren't rocking, and I have some acoustic songs that are more in that vibe," and that's what we did. Didn't really change the music, but I just changed what I played. And so we did those, and then we did like the rock gigs, and it was just it was a growth period. And playing with Martin, playing with a sax player, it was cool. And hanging out with some really cool guitar players as well. It was a good experience.
I love
That's
it.
how I ended up in San Diego.
I love.
Just a side note, when we moved, we had a moving company pick everything up, and I had a lot of guitars at the time. And
Imagine that.
I got parked into my girlfriend at the time got the job, and immediately they sent her to Australia. So I was in a hotel room because we hadn't looked for a place to live yet in Rancho Bernardo, I think it was. And in Rancho Bernardo, it's like 110 degrees every day in the summertime. So I didn't go out much. And I'm at this hotel, and finally the truck comes up, and the guy calls and says, "I'm here." And because they were instructions to, like, when they get there, don't put my guitars in a warehouse, just drop the guitars up at the hotel. And so the guy at the front desk said, "There's a truck here," and the guy at the driver was there. And so I said, "Yeah, I gotta come get my guitars." So the guy watched me pull a couple guitars off, and he goes, "Do you want some help?" And he happened to be a guitar player. I ended up producing his record years later. But he helped me, and the truck driver, when you have hard cases, you can only carry like 2 guitars at a time. We did a lot of trips, as you can imagine. But what was wild was I had been there for 2 weeks and thinking there was nothing there, and all I could see was the back of a mall. And then the guy I become friends with the desk, he goes, "Yeah, there's a mall across the street." So I started going to the hotel, go to the movie theater and the mall every now and then. And I said, "I wish there was guitar stores." He goes, "Carvin's right around the block." I'm like, "No, I didn't know that. I had no idea. I would have been at Carvin every day." But there was no GPS. All I can say, there was no What's Around Me app. There was no Alexa, Siri, where's the nearest guitar store? So.
Uh-oh, I've been called out. So this is Chris Stark's post, and this look at this. Look at the response. Oh, I don't know if you can see it on your device there,
I'm
Chris.
looking.
Larry, rather. Chris Stark. Me to my wife. Larry says I need a telling if anybody's on a mobile device. That's good. And then Melissa Doppler, the chairwoman of the board. Chris Stark. That's why I watch, so I know when I'm being fed a line. Oh, I've been totally called out. By the way, there have been some great posts. I can't put them all up, but like you guys are awesome, and I just like. Otherwise, I'm going to be stringing through. So I'm actually looking for some questions because I feel like we've been hogging the conversation. And hello, everybody. I'm going to very quickly just do a quick blog roll here, and just like I'm going to just dart through these. So just a quick sec. Jay, thanks so much. Andrew, thank you. Chris, Sabrina, Melissa, I'll thank you in person later. Thank you, honey. Dinner was awesome, by the way.
Hi, Melissa.
Yeah. Oh, hang on. Let me bring you. Let's go. Let's go full Larry here while I pull these up. Chris, how are you? Thanks so much for hanging out. Darren, Rick Costa, hello, my friend. Okay. Tony, thank you so much. All right. Mark Swanson, always a pleasure. You rock star, you. Um, so, and then I think I already got Jay, but I just really wanted to give a big shout out to everybody. Helene, hello. Well, there we go. Helene, hello. Steven, another Larry inspired purchase, but you're a good influence there. That's the sort of friend. Gordon Wimpress, Larry Mitchell fan here. But I just want to give a shout out to everybody. Hey, there we go. Oh, there we go. We got a question. Michael Brock. Larry, how much time per week? And I'm reading this out not so you can't read it, Larry, but so anybody who's watching this on an iPhone, they're able to, because on an iPhone, I think that's about like half a point. So, Larry, how much time per week do you spend crafting? And I'm yelling now like an idiot. How much time do you a week do you spend crafting your tones? What is your best advice for someone creating their own presets? Do you recommend or plan to publish any instructional material for preset crafting? What a great question.
Oh, I have a couple people that have been asking me about some sort of fractal workshops, and I'm working on that. I'm probably going to do one next month, and part of it will be on that. As far as lead tones, so when I do my shows, whether it's with a band or on Tuesday nights or whatever, I have one preset per song, and in that preset is the tempo of the song, the delays are timed, what delays are on there, what modulation effects are on there, the wah, the overdrive, and the amp and cab are all the same. So I developed that tone a long time ago. So I haven't changed that much. There might be specialty presets for a different guitar. Like I have some guitars with P90s now, or different humbuckers. But in general, I have the same. I have the same amp, cab, wah, overdrive for every song, and that's the clean sound as well as the dirty sound. And there might be a compressor and to change the clean sound. So I treat it like I have just one amp or two amps, a clean amp and a dirty amp. But a lot of times it's really the same amp. As far as the effects get crafted. The concept of what are the effects that get crafted usually when I'm working on the song, when I'm writing the song or recording the song. And occasionally something's changed because I've done a show where I'm going, well, I don't know if this happens to you, but after 9 albums, I'm going, I just made a set list and every song is an E. I need to take one song out and put another song in that's not an E. And then the same thing, so I might do a set list and I look down and like, oh, all the modulation stuff is the same. I need to change. So after a while, I might change a modulation that's different than the record. So it might be a harmonic tremolo because I'm really loving the harmonic tremolo now. And so I might use that instead of chorus, or I might use the Electric Mistress type flanger instead of chorus too. Which reminds me, I need to change a preset to use that. I've been wanting to do it. I've been hearing it. Some of the presets have extra things that I can turn on, just if I'm really experimental with tones instead of just the playing part. But I created most of this stuff, as the tracks were created or the songs were created. Um, I'm in the process of now. I've the other night I played two songs from the newest EP that's about to come out, and I don't even have presets for those. So I'm using other presets for the song. So none of the delays are the right time, and I haven't figured out the modulation because I haven't locked in what I'm going to do in the record yet. I have lead tracks in there, and main guitar parts, but I haven't totally locked in what the main guitar is going to do yet. So I haven't created the presets. I need to settle in and go, all right, this is where it is. This is what I'm going to do. This is the tools I have. I'm going to make music with those tools and lock it in. I haven't done that yet. So I don't spend lots of time crafting presets in a week. I do it when it's needed, I should say. And the amp tones are all the same. I've been using the same cabinet for probably 7 or 8 years now through different fractal, through the Ultra, the 2, the 2 Plus, the XFX3, the AX8, and now the FM3. So, and the same amp stuff. Cliff has changed the amp sims a bit throughout the different products and stuff like that, but the concept of the tone is still the same. So it's like having, when you have several of the same amp, but, tube amps don't all sound exactly the same, but you go, all right, so this is the amp I used, 3 years ago, and this is the amp I used 2 years ago, and this is the amp I'm using now. They're all the same amp, but this slightly different. I might, this one might have lost some high end, or this one might have lost some low end, stuff like that. So that's how I do it. But I'm not crafting presets just to craft presets, unless someone's asking me to make a preset.
I love it. Back behind me there-ish, there are a few wahs. So I saw your comment in there about the Clyde. So, there are lots of, it's kind of like what you were saying, all the tube amps, they all sound different. There's part drift, and you could have the same identical amps, and they're not going to be identical. What about the Clyde is kind of, because each one of them's got its own mojo. What about the Clyde speaks to you? And is it the Clyde picture, or is it the script?
I don't know which one he modeled. It's the Clyde in the model in the FM3. So I have a Clyde. I lent it to somebody, and for someone who's never done drugs and never been drunk, I don't drink alcohol. I can't remember where a lot of things are. So I lent the Clyde. Actually, this artist that I played with years ago, Debbie Valenti, we swapped wahs, and it was an original Clyde. And I think I lent it to somebody, and I never got it back. So I do have a full tone Clyde, which is like, their take on it as a real wah. But I think that might be the only physical wah that I have now. Because I've lent stuff out to people who need it, and I don't remember where it is and stuff. But in the FM3, it's the Clyde. For lead tones, it's the Clyde. For clean tones, it's the Crybaby. But I roll off everything before it gets to. I want to say, I don't think it gets as high as 2400. It might be even lower.
The interesting thing is the subtext there for the wah indoctrinated, the wadroctinated, or something like that, is that the traditional Crybaby rolls off a bunch of the high end, which is why, correct me if I'm wrong, if you're going to use a wah with a clean tone, you don't want to be spiking people with 3K, so it adds a little bit of a blanket on top when it's engaged. Correct? Is that why you use the kind of the Crybaby on the cleaner tone?
It just seems right. It probably is. It just seems right. It just, I don't know. It just seems right. It doesn't kill you. It's not ice picky. But on the Clyde, for the lead tones, it's throatier. It has more. It seems to have more vocal quality to it.
Jim's got a great question, Larry. Who are your influences? I'd love to know that too.
Well, I was trying to type before. So I grew up on a lot of R&B. Actually, the one main influence I didn't put in there was Prince. I grew up on R&B and funk, and then rock. So there's Eddie Van Halen, which I forgot to put in there. Andy Summers, and actually I was Alex Lifeson, because out of high school I was in a Rush tribute band, and then after we couldn't get lots of women to come to shows, we started doing the Police and Zebra and Triumph as well. So trios, but so Andy Summers, that got me into effects more, and it was just he always experimented with some sounds, and I love that. Prince introduced me to the Octaver, the Boss OC2, and then I heard that in Jimmy Page, and using it, I was like, oh, that's awesome. Um, and then I got into Steve Stevens. He was the local guitar hero, and he was all about some tones and effects and stuff. And I got into the Edge from U2. Later on, I got into Andy Timmons. I've known Andy since the early '90s as well in New York, and he was just just a wonderful person, but also a great player. And jammed with Andy many, many times. And then, of course, I'm a big Eric Johnson. Eric Johnson stopped me in my tracks when I heard Cliffs of Dover. And it's just like, whoa, that's awesome. Um, and Vi was a local. Well, Steve was actually the local guitar hero in Far Rockaway. I went to Far Rockaway High School in Queens, and Steve was the guy that came from that neighborhood and made it. And then my friend Jeff Thal, who later was a student of Steve's, later went on and played with Brian Ferry, and he got me into like delay stuff, like really into delay stuff. And he introduced me to the Edge from U2, and I was like, and my friend Ira Blanco was a big fan of the Edge as well. And and I don't know, I love guitar. There's so many great guitar players. There's so many great guitar players that add something, different colors to everything. There's no wrong way or right way, and everybody does something different. And Steve Vai was the local guitar hero on Long Island who left and made it like really big. And there were some great guitar players. A friend of mine has a show on YouTube on Thursday nights, and he had another friend of mine that I grew up with, John Levin, who plays with Dokken. And I remember going to John's house. We were 16 and 17, or 17, maybe 16. Yeah, 16 and 17. I was 17. I spent many of nights, evenings going to John's house and just hanging out. He could figure out any Van Halen, any Yngwie, any George Lynch. He knew all that stuff. And there was always a group of 10 guitar players that was around that was just great. And I hung out with some really great guitar players with more of a competitive ego than obnoxious ego. So it was great. It was like everybody brought something different to the table. And I don't think anybody was trying to show anybody up, but it would be like, oh, what's that? What chord is that? Or what lick is that? Show me that. And you just showed it to them, and so in that sense, I was the kind of the funk, blues, rock guitar player then, and John was the shredding guitar player. We had another guy, Jeff, who was like the jazz guy, and it was a great time. So that's my community, and sometimes I say I'm self-taught, but I'm really community taught. So being around that group of 10 guitar players was absolutely brilliant. It was just wonderful opportunity to learn and grow. And then, like I said, The Edge, Prince, Van Halen, Andy Summers, Andy Timmons, Eric Johnson, Alex Lifeson, I should have said, as well in there. Lots of great guitar players, And in the 80s, woo, the 80s had some wicked, the Steve Lukather, some wicked studio guitar players.
And then came grunge. So now here's the thing. I have to be careful because I'm not impugning all grunge, but for those of us that had released an instrumental guitar record in, say, 1995, I remember within 5 years I'm teaching at teaching studio in Berkeley, and this kid, is walking by. Is like, I didn't realize they play guitar like that anymore. I was like, it's over. Like, it's over. It's done. Because with the onset of grunge, it's kind of, it seemed like playing in tune, unless you're an Alice in Chains, was no longer the thing. Like, I love Pearl Jam songs, but the guitars are not really the bending and tune thing that I spent so many years. Intonation was a big deal to me, and I realize I'm stepping further and further out on the limb, but I'm just going to go there. It was part of the
I'm gonna join.
rawness. Yeah, okay. So the rawness of the music, I get it, but it's just like, hey, tune that thing. Like,
Yeah,
just.
one of the things that I liked about the '90s was the grunge thing was that it brought back. It was terrifying if you were trying to learn how to play guitar in the early '90s because you needed to start out with Eruption and then you needed to play Cliffs of Dover after that. It had to be, and you needed to know all the modes. You need to know all this stuff. And when you first starting your second lesson, probably was frightening. And what grunge brought to the table was that feeling that you should always have with guitar is you could take a 15-year-old and teach them three chords, and that's 1,000 songs. You know that's a great feeling. And then you should progress if you want to beyond that, right? It's beyond it is not for everybody. But let me tell you something. Um, I've never actually spoken about in public, and I'm going to say it now because I'm gonna bring it up later in a documentary later on. Um, I did my second record, and I had been at that point I had been signed to 4 labels and not made any money. And there's someone that you know that I know that used to work at a guitar publication, and they left and started. They left and became a record executive at a major label, and that person used to come to see my shows in Manhattan all the time.
I know
And
exactly who you mean.
you don't have to mention his name,
No, 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 no,
but
no, no. Keeping it clean. I think it was
he called me
Atlantic.
up one day.
Atlantic
Huh?
would be the label. I think he went to Atlantic.
Nope, Polydor.
Okay, but
Poly.
I know who it is. And
Maybe ended up Atlantic later on,
okay,
but he called me up and he said, I've been a fan of your music for years, and I have this position at this record label, and I'd like to talk with you about some stuff. Are you working on new material? I said I can. I have some new ideas. I hadn't recorded them. He goes, well, I'd love to hear what you're working on. Bring me a demo. So I borrowed a 4-track, and I did the best I could to work on some songs. And I called him up, said I got some songs, 3 songs. I brought him to his office. He listened to 2 of them, and then he stopped and he proceeded to tell me how I was approaching 30, or I think I just turned 30, and that I should really think about a second career in music. And part of the problem was I played too clean, and maybe I should think about not playing so in tune to go with what's going on around, in current times of music at the time. And he said some other things that he was trying to be helpful, but it shattered everything I had in me at the moment. I had no response. And he told me about like the one band that he had signed and how great they were, and he put it on, and I hated it, not because it was because I listen to all kinds of music. I listen to punk rock, I listen to grunge. I just didn't like that particular band, but also I had just been shattered, and he's telling me that I should probably think about doing something else in music, which I did later on, but not because of him. And uh, I'll never forget my friend Sam picked me up, and Sam was a crazy, kooky guy. And I talked to him for a minute. He goes, "You know what you need to do? You need to make a record." I go, "Sam, I don't have a record deal. I don't have any money to make a record. It used to be you could just make a record on your iPad or a laptop, man. You needed like a studio." And he goes, he was collecting gear, and he had a studio in his basement. "Here's the keys to my house. Go make a record." And that's a whole other thing, which I told in one of the magazines that both you and I had written an article on. In, but that moment, and I won't get to that moment ever again, because what came out of that was me not listening. Me doing a record, my acoustic record, and not keeping me in the music business, and not listening to anybody tell me that following trends, because that person's not at a record company and he hasn't been in a record company anymore, and in a long time actually. But it was eye opening, and I later on worked as a producer, and an assistant for these pop producers, and watching the way they treat artists and watch the way things happen in the music business, and that caused me to, before I got to that that frame of mind in life, I left, and I said, I'd rather produce singer songwriters that are saving money up to help to pay for their record. They're still working day jobs to pay for their record, than to deal with that music business on that scale, and that coldness. So I hated that person for it for a long time. Now I let go. I don't really, I shouldn't say hate, but I didn't like that person for saying that. Now it's like, it pushed me into it pushed me to be who I am. Not listening to him, but doing that record in my friend Sam's basement and having it happen the way it did, which is a whole nother long story. It was definitely divine intervention. That led me to believe that I could still do music, which is all I wanted to do. Is still do music on whatever level I want. And back when in '95, when most artists weren't making their own records, I made a record. I started making my own records, and I was like, I could do it, and I'll sell whatever I can sell, and I can still be able to do music, and I'll be happy. So anyway, I haven't told that really publicly before about that part of it, but there's a documentary that's going to come out that has that in there. So I won't mention that person's name, but
Well, first of all, congratulations. So I got the B side of that single. So I was managed by a guy named Carter at the time, who co-wrote Red with Sammy Hagar, was one of the co-writers on Incense and Peppermints, and signed Tina Turner to the Private Dancer deal, produced the track Private Dancer, brought in Jeff Beck to play on that record, and then ended up managing me. He was, when I was 24 playing at a club in some rock band, he came and saw the band. He was at that point VP of A&R at Atlantic. I mean, this, back in the day, stuff like this actually happened, right? You'd be playing somewhere and like a vice president of a record company would show up and he was like, I hate the band, but I like you. And so we stayed in touch. And so this guy was the quote unquote guitar expert. And I know we're talking about the same guy because that's why they hired him. He was the guitar expert and it was Polydor. And I thought, this is great. I've got it made. Panned it. And I went out and I made my first record in 1995. Swear to you. So we had the exact same thing. And honestly, thanks to his no, because you know what would have happened to that record under him at that label? Nothing. And the only thing worse than not getting signed is getting signed and getting dumped. Shelved, dumped, all of that. And so, the funny thing is that, there's a great story, and I don't mean to steal the thunder from your documentary, but you also talked about The Traveler. I think it was The Traveler, where you released the record, and was it that album that you went to Italy, or was it a different album? Where you released the record the day afterwards, you went to Italy, you come back, you've done no PR, no promo on the record, and somebody's like, hey, by the way, it's #2 on Amazon Blues Rock Chart, and you're like, So wait a second. So all the stuff that I've always done, let's hire somebody, let's spend some money, let's do this. The record I don't do anything to, that's the one that people...
Yep, Traveler. You never know. You never know. My dilemma now with the 2 new records, I have 2 new EPs, is how do you release something in this pandemic time? And do I really release it so that it's on Spotify, or do I not? And it's such a weird, I don't know. I really don't know what to do.
Well, I have to say one of my favorite things about you is you're a Renaissance man. I mean, and that you have ridden the technology wave. Like, we're the same age. So,
Hmm.
actually, no, I'm older than you are. And I've been so impressed. Like, so the house shows, like, you have found a way as a traveling musician in a day and age where, the internet and it's just changed. It's just different. And the clubs that you and I might have played don't exist anymore. Um,
Yes. You know what's good about the technology is that we have in 1985 we would have just been crazed over the ability that we have now. Um, when my first record came out in 1990, the budget was $18,000, and we maxed it out. And then they wanted to do a video, and they wanted me to be responsible for half of the money for the video. And the video was like 10 grand, and I was like, no, I don't have that kind of money. And no, and if you know the way the music business works, it was not going to get played on MTV. Back then when MTV played music videos or VH1, there's a whole process to that, and not a lot of independents don't get through that without going through major hoops and spending lots of money. So it would have been played on public access TV, which I was able to do anyway, and it would have been played on in some of those swanky clubs that had a TV in the corner where you couldn't hear the music. You remember those? So I was like, no, I'm not doing that. But now we could write a song right now this way, record it, send files back and forth, upload it tomorrow. It could be on YouTube and have, tons of views. I could send it to friends and it would be in front of lots of people. It could be on public access TV. It could be, well, if that still exists, it also will be in front of thousands of people. We didn't have that ability then. We didn't have that ability to promote the way we do now. Um, I remember when email came, and that was a big deal. You didn't have to run into people on the street to give them flyers for your show. You could actually send an email out to them. Now people see a post every day. You can make a post every day that a show's coming up. You can promote. This. I don't know. There's so many ways to do stuff, and the technology. Don't let it rule you, but embrace it. You don't have to live on it. You don't have to put your entire personal life on it. But if you're an artist, it's a great tool to use. And all these things are tools to get your music across. Try not to get caught up in your tool. The tool is just a tool. So it's just like vocabulary to use, not to just go out and say, I'm going to play the scale all night long. I'm not going to just surf the internet or get lost in this technology all night long. It's just a tool. Pro Tools, tape, recording, they're all tools to get your music, to get what's at your heart across. If that makes sense. It sounds like I'm preaching now. I don't want to stop. I don't want to be preaching.
no, 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 no. That's great. Let's see if I can pull up. I may have to do a little bit of scrubbing here, but I found a little gem here. So I got to pull
Okay.
this up because this is going to be fun. Hang on a second. Um, I'm normally pretty good about getting some of my production stuff together, but and I don't know how far in this one's going to be, but here we go.
That was for NHK, Japanese television. And what's cool is they shot the show that night at the Bottom Line. And then they said, oh, by the way, we're going to pair it on the same night with this guitar player named Eric Johnson. I'm like, what? So in Japan, it came on the same, our shows back to back, which was pretty wild. But yeah, look, the cigarette, you see the cigarette and the giant cigarette? I didn't never smoke either, but on the stage, there's a giant cigarette that says no fumar, no smoking. I got in Italy. And then all the stuffed animals and the Harky backline.
I did see the stuffed animal, and finally, I scoured the internet for a photo of you with the quad, but in that clip, there it is in the rack. So I'm like, finally got. I loved, I love all you tones. I've already said it, but that particular sound, that was like great tone was not easy to come by back then. You didn't have Fractal, you didn't have Kemper, you didn't have Helix. You had to work to get that kind of tone. I just remember seeing you at the Ibanez booth in 1990.x and just going, wow, what a creamy sound. And correct me if I'm wrong, you said it before, but it was a 2290 in that rig, or what was the effect in that?
Yeah, it was a Mesa Boogie quad preamp, 2290, a Yamaha SPX 90, a TC chorus, stereo chorus, and I'm drawing a blank on what else. Sometimes I had another preamp in there as well, but I can't remember. The Rain mixer, the Korg Cylon tuner, I can't remember what else was in there. I have to look at it. But and at one point I had a Eventide in there, but yeah, that rack was 350 pounds. I remember that.
I ended up with the old one of the Zappa guys. It was the first percussion rack in Los Angeles, so it was this tall. So the fortunate thing was it was tall enough that you could kind of wheel it up to the truck and tip it over and push it in. Yeah. So my buddy Mike Mong here asked, are there any glue-on nails for the finger picking that you've got there for the acoustic stuff?
I don't finger pick. I use a pick.
That would be a no.
I wish I could finger pick. I just never got to go. Do you know Ben Woods?
No.
You should look up Ben Woods. He's frightening. Frightening. Great player. Plays flamenco and classical, and he plays a whole bunch of metal tunes. But just look him up, Ben Woods. But yeah, I use a pick. I play nylon string with a pick.
I love it. All right, hang on. I'm looking for a question here because I'm feeling guilty about hogging all the questions myself. All right. Oh, here we go. All right. So I'm going to augment Tom's question with an S on the end. Favorite drummers. And I'll augment that even further with what about them in particular kind of that you dig.
All right. So Bonham played so musical to me. And it's the first thing I notice when I go to a club and there's a band playing and they're playing some Zeppelin, and you could hear the drummer, like you were talking about guitar players thinking of what they're going to play next. You could hear the drummer, you could see them play a drum fill, and then they slow down or they speed up during the drum fill, and then they get into the groove and they slow down the groove because they're thinking about what fill comes next. And then they speed up when they got that, and then they start playing the fill. And it's like, that's not Bonham. Bonham played, it seems like he played matter-of-factly, like it's a communication. It was, I'm pretty sure there were set licks, but he played like the thing that belonged there because it was musical. And then I got into Stuart Copeland, and I got to play with Stuart. We almost had a band together. We had a band for a minute, couldn't find a singer, and then it just fell apart. But it was such an honor to play, just to be in the room going, let's do a Copeland over there. Let's do a Copeland. Yeah, Stuart and the Police was just such a fresh approach to drums. Just like, what's going on? And then Neil Peart, because I was in a Rush band, so the Rush tribute band. And I was like, okay, all right, this is cool. Different, totally different kind of thing. And then I have the pleasure I was just talking about this, and I would like to do something about this while we're on at home too. But in New York in that time period, um, I got to play with some of the most amazing drummers. Um, there's music, the school music and art, which was at some point was the home of like all these the high school of all these great drummers, and Eve Gerard in the video you just played was Eve Gerard playing drums, and a lot of people said Eve sounds great. Eve went to that school, and my friend Tony James went to that school, great drummer. Um, it's Sterling Campbell who played with David Bowie for years, and then he left and he played with the Pretenders, and he was a member of Duran Duran, and he came back to David Bowie. Um, uh, Zach Alfred, there's just a crazy. But what was cool about that time period was all these great drummers in New York. They all worked, and they seemed to have less an ego than most of them did. Then Van Romain was around then. Than the guitar players, and the guitar players were really supportive, most of them. But I remember when Eve was getting married, he goes, "Hey man, I'm getting married, but I can make those shows right before the wedding, like 2 weeks before the wedding." I said, "Eve, are you sure?" He goes, "Yeah." So here we go, right before, like a couple weeks before the wedding. Eve calls and goes, "Hey man, I can't make the gig. Don't worry, I got Tal Bergman's coming." I'm like, "Tal Bergman? Who's Tal Bergman?" Tal Bergman played on so many records. He was Bruno Mars's last drummer. He was in Billy Idol. He played with lots of people. Enya, great drummer from Israel, just funky, ridiculous chops. And Tal shows up. He goes, "Okay," and we played a gig. Never rehearsed. He goes, "I can't make the rehearsal." I was like, "Okay, it's gonna be one of those." Kill, kill, kill the gig. Right, instrumental music, not something that's just like that's in part of his repertoire. After the gig, he goes, "Oh yeah, I can't make the next gig, but I just called my friend Graham Hawthorne. He can do it." I'm like, "Who? What's a Graham Hawthorne? Who?" Graham came, no rehearsal, right? House drum kit, tunes up the kit, lightly tapping. I'm like, "Oh, this is gonna be interesting." And he goes, "You ready?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he counts off. We go into the first song, and it was like the whole night was like a steamroller. It was just like that was amazing. There were great drummers. I mean, just great drummers just around. And so I learned then to trust when a drummer said, "I can't make the gig." I got, my friend Alex Alexander played with Dido, tons of big gigs. He played with me. I learned to trust them. Like when they go, "I can't make the gig," but I called a friend of mine and I go, "Okay." And when I moved to some other cities, though, it wasn't quite like that. I really didn't understand that that's not the way it's normally. The first time I moved to another city, I dealt with like the drum ego, and drummers, like, "Oh yeah, I'm the best drummer in town." I'm like, "Oh, my friends would never have said that in New York," and they were literally all working. They're all playing in like Larry Averman played on the Vaughn Brothers Family Style and the Rick Ocasek gig with me, and has been doing Zumanity forever in Vegas. But he's just a ridiculous drummer. And even Van Romain played with Steve Morris and Enrique Iglesias. They just worked. They played with every. They'd be doing a jazz gig one night, a rock gig the next night, a funk gig, a country gig. And the only time I've seen anything like that, the few times I've been in Minneapolis, watching that kind of vibe happen. But no one goes, I'm the best drummer. You should hire me because I'm the best drummer in town. And in New York, nobody would have said that. But you would have been like, "Wow, this guy's amazing." And he go, "Oh, a friend of mine gonna sit in." And you're like, "Okay." And you go, "Wow, that guy's even like more amazing." And guys that didn't overplay, they had great chops, but they played what was right for you know, the '80s were. I don't care how many chops you have. Can you do the gig? Are you gonna show up? You're gonna learn the songs, and can you play what's right for the song? And if they give you a solo, then you can unleash your stuff. But um, that was a great time. And then, like I said, it was eye opening when I left New York in the '90s. I'm like, "Oh wow, this is not quite the same." But not that I haven't met any great drummers. I've met some great drummers, but just the vibe and the amount of great drummers in New York at that time were just ridiculous. I'm sorry. So those are my favorite. I would have to say Bonham, um, uh, Stuart Copeland, Neil Peart, and some of the drummers I've played with, Sterling Campbell, B50, B52s, Pretenders, Duran Duran, David Bowie several times, Alex Alexander, Tony James, Larry Aberman, all drummers that Tal Bergman, Near Z played in Genesis. He played on a song on one of my records, and I just did a little project. Hopefully, we'll get back to it after COVID. But he's another drummer from Israel that's just his chops and his funkability and his musicality is just ridiculous. Jeff Bowders is ridiculous. He's coming. That Jeff is like, "Hey Jeff, I got this gig and this is what I can pay. Yeah, I'll do it." I'm like, "Okay." Jeff is great, really great person, great killer drummer, just really killer drummer. Lots. I know I'm leaving people off, but those are my favorite drummers. But I've drawn a blank on different people. Simon Phillips, it was great to play with Simon Phillips that time. I'd love to do a project with Simon at some point, but we'll see.
I got spoiled. I had Atma on 2 records, so
Yeah.
So like Atma was the guy that kind of, like you were talking about, you learn certain things about the groove, and you actually talked about placing where the snare is in different locations to the click. That's the thing that Atma and I spent years playing in rehearsal with the click at a volume level that most people would run for the hills, and I was like, "Oh, this is great. This is how you learn time." And I was like, I just lapped it up because then, he just showed me, he's like, "Hey, here's where the snare is in this section in this song, and then this is where we move it to in there." And when you kind of realize that world exists, and then and the great thing is that Atma and I both loved Duran Duran, loved My Vishnu Orchestra, love all the instrumental players. So like all that.
Oh, Tony Smith. I played with Tony Smith too in a band called The Crunch, and he was in Mahavishnu.
Oh no, and that was with T.M. Stevens. The flyer I found was too small to post, but I mean T.M. Stevens. I mean, come on, So
those videos are on YouTube too. That was for German television. We did that's on YouTube, and it's funny with Bernie Worrell in the band. That's when here's a lesson, and here's a lesson that will humble you, and educate at the same time. I show up to rehearsal. It's T.M. Stevens and Tony Smith. So many notes going by. And I'm like, okay. And Crystal Talafaro playing percussion. We're supposed to be a funk rock band, so I'm gonna play some funky stuff. And I played a couple of things. You got to find a spot to play. And I thought I was doing it, and it made things a little bit funkier, and it brought things back. Because there was so many notes. It was great, but so many notes. And then the next day, next rehearsal, Bernie Worrell shows up. And it's great. It's craziness going on. I'm playing funky stuff. And Bernie's got one of those Hohner organs into a wah pedal, into a JC120. And he just goes, "What that?" And he found like the funky 16th note to play and the funky 8th note spot to play. And it made the whole thing even funkier. And at that point, I go, "Yeah, I'm going to leave the funk to him. I'm going to play power chords." I played power chords. Bernie was having the funk, and Tony Smith and TM were just wailing. It was, but it was great. That was humbling. It was like, oh, I thought I was funky. And Bernie Worrell, if you don't know, was an original member of Parliament Funkadelic. And that was funk on a whole nother. He found in the middle of chaos, he found the 4 funkiest spots to play. Just one note here, 2 notes there. And it made everyone else's ears perk up and go, "Oh yeah, that's listening and going, yeah. How do I contribute and make this better? Oh, that's right. It's supposed to be funky. It's supposed to be a funk rock band." So at that point, I became the rock and he was the funk. And TM and Tony Smith, who teaches at Berkeley now, was like just killing it, just killing notes and stuff like that. But you should check that out. The band's called The Crunch, and there's some videos on YouTube. And I think I put up 1 or 2, and then somebody else put the whole concert up. And it was for German television, and it was cool. It was a very cool project.
All right, I just looked at the clock. It's 8:22, so we got 8 more minutes here, and then we're out of here. I having way too much fun, but I'm like, Oh my! So all right. So quick history lesson. If you don't know who Tony Smith is, correct me if I'm wrong. Beckhammer Live, correct?
I don't know.
I
What?
think he played. I think it was Fernando Saunders on bass, Jan
Oh,
Hammer,
you did play with
Jeff Beck,
yeah,
and then him on drums. Um,
Tony Thunder Smith. I know he played with Fernando Saunders and stuff like that. He was also in Lou Reed's band for like 15, 16 years on and off. So that's what I'm talking about. Drummers that have the ability to play in Mahavishnu, but also have the heart and soul of music that they go do. Like, his main gig was Lou Reed. There's no 30-second notes with Lou Reed. There just none. There are no 64th notes with Lou Reed, you know. And as a friend of mine, Sterling Campbell, has played stadiums from bar clubs to stadiums. I watched him, tell a young drummer that that's doing stuff. He goes, just remember that there ain't nobody playing 30-second notes in arenas. It's just not. I mean, Neil Peart got away with it, but there's nobody else in playing 30-second notes on drums in
no, the
arenas.
drum tech.
The drum tech is.
The
Yeah.
drum tech plays lots of 30-second notes before the artist shows up when they're breaking
Yeah.
into heads. Uh,
Yeah.
there's so many lovely comments here. Bonica, just love it. Just like more amazing things. Just you guys are awesome. Let me see if I can't.
Ronnie Lee's on it too.
No, I adore Ronnie Lee. Like just one of the most amazing. So that was the Vi Academy 5.0.
Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
hung out. So we had this little clan after the last day. We all went to this bagel place and we just hung out and had the best hang. All right, Eric Walker. How can one gain legato skills that sound as flowing as yours? I love that. Larry Mitchell, that's you, baby.
Uh, I just practiced weird stuff. I used to play. I don't know if you were one of those guys that watched cartoons. The young kid and playing scales. I did that, and then I don't know why this happened, but uh, at some point in the late '80s, I worked on being able to pick everything I can play and then hammer on and pull off and slur. I call it slurring everything I can play. So I could play the same thing. All right. So this is he's going to go down a rabbit hole here. Um,
Woohoo!
Technique wise, I was working on picking anything I could play. I could pick it or I could hammer on uh, and play it. What's good about that is back to the whole thing about soloing, improving, and communication. And I don't know if you caught one of my classes where we're talking about soloing, but at Vi Academy, but you practice all these techniques so that you can use them at will. Um, Part of speaking is we don't speak like this all the time. It's just like picking every single note, right? You speak when you use inflections when you want to play something, when you want to make a statement. You change the speed of your conversation or your sentence
Come
when
on.
you want to emphasize something.
Come on.
Um, hmm?
Come on. I'm just absolutely. That was like, yes, yes,
Right.
yes.
So when I always tell people when you want people to really hear something, you either speed it up or you slow it down. So when you're talking, and I use this analogy all the time, I go, "Hey, look at that girl that just walked in," or "Hey, look at that girl that just walked in," or "Hey, look at that girl that just walked in." I just said the same thing 3 times, but all different, and you should be able to play that way. And part of the communication and improv is how do you want to say something. You don't say it the same way. You don't you can play the same lick a dozen times, but it doesn't have to sound exactly the same, because you're not going to repeat the same thing in a conversation exactly the same every time. You might say the same thing to get your point across, but you'll stress a certain word in that sentence. You'll slow down before you get to that word. You'll put some space in there, or you'll speed it up when you want to. It's the same thing. Soloing and improvising is the same thing as communication and speaking. Um, you can't plan it out. You could say this is the topic I want to speak about, but how you communicate and how people understand it has to do with inflections, the volume you speak at. If you turn it down, if you speak softly, then people lean in to hear you a little bit more. Um, if you speak loudly, it means something else. It expresses how you feel at the moment about something. So one of those things about working on how we got to this long way around this was even being able to pick in legato was just being able to pick everything and then being able to not pick everything and to be able to, so now I use that, like sometimes I'll pick a phrase, I'll pick a note in a phrase that I want to stand out and I won't pick the others, or I might not pick any of them, or I might pick one note, or it's just all part of the techniques that you learn bending. You don't bend just for the sake of bending. You bend to express something, because you can obviously play the same note without bending it. It's all the little techniques that help you communicate. And at some point, I worked on all of those. I think in my whole clinic teaching thing, I always say any technique that you work on for about 2 weeks, you have it to a degree that you can communicate, but you have to really work on that technique. And I took that to heart years ago. It wasn't 2 weeks, but it was, for months and months of working on a specific technique and then not knowing what to do with it. Just having it is in my bag of tricks somewhere in the back of the head. And then later on, as I start to improvise more, I'm able to communicate. It's like if you read and you learn a bunch of facts and learn a bunch of words, and you can communicate with people in several different ways. So it's like when you watch someone who's a scholar, like a serious scholar, and they speak, but some people can only speak in a certain intellect. It'd be like listening to a bunch of lawyers and you're not a lawyer going, I don't understand what they just said. But then someone who would be able to say the same thing in a different way that lets you explain, that makes you understand. It helps you to understand what they're talking about. Does that make sense?
That was really eloquently put. You know what it's like to be at a dinner table with a bunch of experts who you're like, you guys are just so busy smoking each other's bowl. They're just like, it's just a bunch of bowl, you know what, as opposed to like, and I think, the amazing thing that you bring, and I'm going to say it, one of the things that I love about your playing is you know how to read the room, right? And that means you're listening to the conversation, you're reading the people in the room, like, because it's a funny thing, because there's two conversations happening. Actually, there's three conversations. There's the conversation that's happening with the sound man.
Yeah.
That conversation, and just anybody that's out there when we come back to live gigging, just so you know, that is the finger that is on your fader. So like, or the one that says, you really want two channels. So that conversation is one that you got to come in and understand. They own that. When it comes to time for the show, you think you own. Well, I'm sorry. When I'm playing, I know who owns the house, and it's the sound tech, because they can make or break the entire show. If they're with you and you're with them, it's cool. They need to know that you've got their back, and so on and so forth. Then there's a conversation you're having with the people that you're on the stage with, and then there's a conversation you're having with the audience. Because, it's an interesting thing, and that's, with these live streams, I'm very conscious of trying to engage the person that when I have the privilege of having a guest who is especially as esteemed a player and a person and as beloved as you are. It's very important to listen to the dialogue, right? But then there's the people in the chat that are actually, you and I could just be on the phone having our own conversation, and they're just like, thanks a lot. Like, we just sat here and watched you guys just pat each other on the back and said, Larry, I love your tone. Oh, thanks, Doug. I appreciate that. Yeah. And
I'm trying to pay attention to.
It's so hard, but I love what you said, to kind of 8:31. As we put a bow on this. And first of all, thank you to everybody that came tonight. I really appreciate it. Just and all the love to Larry, just like what an amazing player. Look at the legs that this guy has had. It's and the funny thing is watching that the Bottom Line show, I'm like, you could totally hear it. right? You know, it's like that little video. You know which one I'm talking about, of the 15 or 16-year-old Joe Bonamassa. And I'm not. You were much more evolved,
He was
relatively,
12.
on Danny Gatton's Telecaster or something, right?
No, I got a call from Danny Gatton about him playing, but yeah, I don't know if he might have had Danny Gatton's I don't know about that, but when Danny Gatton says, I got a friend that you should do the show, you're like, okay, all right,
And
okay.
and it was great to see you do the show with I mean, he's just a ridiculous player. Joe's got game. So Larry, as we close out, is there anything on the horizon? So you got this release thing you're trying to figure out. Are any projected delivery dates of when people can kind of consume your next content besides the stream?
I'm going
And
to.
your next stream is Tuesday night. Sorry, your next stream is Sunday night at what time?
I haven't Sunday nights. I haven't set totally yet, but it's probably between 7 and 9, and I'm gonna lean a little closer to 8 or 9 ish, probably 8. And it's called "It Happened on a Sunday," and it's all acoustic. Sundays are acoustic. Um, and then after that, it's Tuesdays. Tuesday nights at 9 o'clock Eastern time. I've been doing that forever, and it's great. We have a good time. There's a bunch of chats going on and stuff like that. It's a lot of fun. Um, I am definitely going to release something October 1st, or the week of October 1st. I have 2 EPs. Why are they not the same record? They're 2 5-song EPs, an acoustic EP and an electric EP. The acoustic EP is called "The Light Within," and the electric EP is called "Shadows on the Soul." Um, they could be one record of 10 songs, but I want people to have that experience. I have people that really love the acoustic stuff I do, and it's broken up with the electric stuff. There's an acoustic song on almost every one of my records, or a couple of them on songs on records. But and then there are people that just want to hear it, like, hear it rocking up, and they like the mellow of the electric stuff, but the acoustic stuff might be too much for them at the moment. So maybe when we go back out and start playing the gigs again, they might be an option to buy one CD that has both on there, or if you just want to have the experience of just listening to that, just the acoustic record the way it was intended to be, and the electric record the way it's intended to be, you could do that. I still go back to the albums. When you bought an album, that was the experience. It wasn't just you bought a single and you listened to it out of context. You listened to the album the way the album was produced, from start to finish. And then you might have a couple of songs you go, I'm going to skip that song, I want to hear this. But it was a listening experience. And so people can still probably buy, they'll be able to buy whatever songs they want, but the listening experience is key to me. So I want to offer that opportunity. So that's why there's a 5-song EP of acoustic and a 5-song electric EP. And I don't know if we're really a lot of, like, even in the country guys, the big country guys aren't releasing full albums. People aren't necessarily buying full albums anymore. They're 5 songs here more often is probably the process. So I'm going to say that I'm going to release at least one of them the first week of October. I could release them right now. I'm just still like, yeah, let me take this one. Let me do this take again. Let me settle in. I'm trying to play them on the shows on Tuesday nights so that I could get a feel for, like, because I always do that. I release a song, release a record, and then I start playing it live and go, oh, this is where I really want us to go. And so, anyway, I just dragged on. But yeah, I'll release something, and I'll try and release more physical content when we can get back out playing. I don't know if I'll be going to mail CDs out, on a daily basis, but we'll figure something out. But digitally it'll be released. And then also I started doing this, which you should think about too. We can talk more about it later, but I'm sending certain people that have been tipping on Tuesday nights. I just sent one song out called Father. I'm going to send something out probably in the next day or two from the electric record. What I send out will be slightly different than what's on the actual official release, which will be slightly different than what's on the physical release. Just because I like those days of like there was a single, then there was a 12-inch single, and then there was the album version and stuff like that. It's still the same song, but there's something slightly different about each version of it, and I think it's be fun. I remember buying red vinyl Prince records and and looking for the 19-minute version. But
Do you have How Come You Don't Call Me Anymore?
I have it on digital. I had a single of it somewhere, but I don't know where that is now.
I've got
Do
it
you
on
have it?
12. I've got it on 12-inch vinyl. Actually, the funny thing is, I remember I must have recorded to a cassette
Of
and
course.
brought it to a lesson with Joe Satriani and said, "You got to hear this guy," because I don't think Joe had heard. Because it was. How do you say it? It was not a time where it was cool for white people to like Prince yet, right? Like he had not broken to the masses, unless you were gay,
Okay.
which I'm not. But all good, whatever, all good. That boy, I just stepped into it real bad, but that's okay. So the thing is, it's like Prince, white people just. You remember the Rolling Stones tour?
Oh
What
yeah. Oh
happened
yeah.
when
Boulevard.
Prince opened for the Stones? Like,
Yeah.
nothing personal about the white folks that were there at the show, but like, we're not having any of this. They were not down. And mind you, this
They
was the
booed
same
him
group of
away.
people 10 years later, like, Purple Rain. I'm just
Yeah.
like, I'm not buying that. I know who you were. It's just
Yeah.
like, but that first record is just all right, I'm sorry, so you just cut me off if I need to, but I'm in Prince mode, so I'm just going there. So like those early, like Controversy, like that
Hmm.
record, that guitar playing, I mean, just because the thing is, oh, I'm getting animated, this could be bad. Rhythm guitar, I'm going to say it is the sexiest thing on the planet. Like people think lead guitar is cool, but what most people don't know is rhythm guitar. You're soloing the entire time, and nobody else knows because it's this interplay with the drums and
Yeah.
all that stuff, and it's like and that's why Simon Phillips was like, "You're the guy that's going to play rhythm because I know you're going to sit in the pocket instead of thinking about." Let's see, what lick shall I play next? You're like, Larry is going to be the guy that, at the expense of kind of that last two beats of the measure, you're not thinking about what I'm going to play here. I'm thinking about making sure I finish that cycle such that the bottom doesn't fall out of this thing. And the amazing thing about those early Prince records in particular, because I think you mentioned something that I didn't get a chance to ask you about, but you were talking about categories. Prince
Hmm.
jumped into the category of superstar. He also jumped into the category of pop, which in
Hmm.
some ways meant to me he never came back to that place where Prince was just and musicians grow and change, and I get all of that. But the early Prince records, it was Prince the musician. He was
Yeah.
more interested in making records that the music was so beat you in the backside of your head, like the ballads, the up tempo stuff, but like the grooves were just like they were clue, dude. I mean, just like
Yeah.
Let's Work. You got the extended dance mix at Let's Work.
I do have it on. I don't have any records anymore, but I do have some records someplace, but I have it on digital. I do. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I've got the.
I got a great Prince story.
Come
Ready
on,
for
bring
this?
it on, bring it on.
Uh, it's 1979.
Oh, come on, come on.
I think it's 79, and I was hanging out with this. I was 78, so I was hanging out with this girl, and her mom was not home. I'm 14, and so we're hanging out on the couch talking, and she has this record on, and Bambi comes on, the song Bambi from his first record, and I'm like, "What's this?" She goes, "This new guy, Prince." I'm like, "Okay," and then the solo happens. I'm like, what's his name again? Prince. All right, couple of songs go by. Wow, this is cool. We're hanging out. We're hanging out. Another song comes on, and I'm like, who is this? She goes, it's Prince. I go, can I borrow this? And she said, yeah, sure. I got up, took the record, and left. I went home and listened to it. I went home and listened to it. I was 14 with another 14-year-old girl. We were hanging out unsupervised. And all I could do was think about, what is this music going on? What is going on? That was it. There was Santana type lead guitar going on, and there was funk grooves, and it was just like in the vocal stacks. I was like, what is this? I couldn't understand it. I went home and listened to it. Mm-hmm.
He had, I mean, you know, again, it's kind of like watching that first video of you at the bottom line. You kind of go, okay, it was already all going on, right? You know, but with Prince, he kind of did all the stuff, right? Like he played the drums, played the bass, you know, so literally he heard it all, sat down in the studios like, all right, you know, just like, and apparently it was really fast too, right? So he just got to work because he was just like, well, I hear it, I just got to sit there and play it, you know?
Yep.
And, you know, I remember it was Andre. What was on? Andre Simone. So you ever go to Chandara before it closed in Hollywood there on Cahuenga? That, you know, so, you know, I'm in there and there's Andre Simone, you know, and it's just like, you know, and then there was Dez. I think I met Dez once. And then I was at a gas station and you know, Morris, I'm like, what's up, Morris? Morris Day's there putting gas in his Cadillac. You know, it was just a time, man. And then, you cut me off if you need to, but you just say, you know, I gotta go when you need to go. But we're gonna go into Terry Lewis and Jimmy Jam because we've actually
and Jelly Bean
and
Jelly Bean last couple of years.
So you know, so the Terry Lewis and Jimmy Jam were obviously the guys in the time and behind Janet Jackson and that record that they did for Human League with song Human and you know just ginormous producers. I mean, that was an exciting time. So do you know that Corey Wong, because we haven't talked about Corey, before we get out of here, we got to throw a little, so you've listened to Corey, yeah?
No, I don't know Corey.
Oh, you're in for some, okay. Wolfpack is the band that he is a member. Yeah, that guy. Yeah. So he's from Minneapolis. And the guy that he played with was one of the drummers, not in the Revolution, but in one of the later iterations, or you know the Revolution. Did you know Miko Weaver?
No.
Okay, so, but what? And this guy has perfect time.
Of course.
So, and I'm going to forget the name of the drummer, but that's the guy that Corey came up with playing with in Minneapolis, St. Paul. So he's a skinny little white dude, you know, the Strat's bigger than he is. Ridiculous guitar player. Ridiculous. But he came up playing, it's kind of like the same thing that I had with Atma, where the click will own you, or we're not leaving. But playing with this guy that had perfect meter, right? Have you played with anybody who's got perfect meter?
Oh, yeah, I played, yeah. Yeah. Well, Simon, Near, Tal Bergen. Yeah, no, I when I say the drummers that I hung out with in the 80s, they're all working. They're all like done major gigs and still doing major gigs. They're all great. They're all really great. But yes, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Was it Michael Bland, the drummer that he played with?
Definitely, maybe.
Heavy? Heavy guy?
I don't know. I just remember hearing the way that sounds, I think.
Okay.
But you know, just the way Corey talked about it. I mean, you know, it's just like the guy at the time doesn't move. You know, literally the song starts without a click, without Dr. Bob, you know, the Dr. Beat. Literally, the song starts at the exact BPM that the song's supposed to start at. I mean, just the freaky, you know, it's just like, you know, we're guitar players. I don't know about you, but I get a little excited. I have a little bit too much caffeine. I'm a BPM or two or maybe three ahead, you know, where I'm choosing where I'm going to start the song. But they're the guys. It's like, it's here.
Yeah.
In any case, Larry, what a
Yeah, you
privilege.
can't mess with the time with Prince.
Yeah, no, and you know, the orchestration. So, what a privilege. That was a very fun left turn because I got to tell you, those records, I learned so much about music, and you know, and the songs were great. I mean, that's the art, really, right? Especially with the lyric, when you've got great songs that have great music, that's also musically challenging. Like that's just kind of that's the whole trifecta. Okay, again, LarryMitchell.com. Two potential offerings that may have slightly sub offerings as well for the fully indoctrinated. Is there anything else you would like to add before we say goodnight and thank you?
It's been a pleasure talking with you, man. Thank you so much for inviting me on, and thank you everybody for tuning in and watching and listening. And yeah, I just you know, it's heavy times right now. I hope everybody can find something to do that keeps them positive, and being creative is a good thing for that. And just that's it. I'm just playing music, trying to enjoy what I do, and trying to make a few people smile along the way.
You succeeded with flying colors tonight, as you always do.
Thank you, God. We got to do some playing together, man. I've been watching you. I watch you on when you go live, and you're doing some great stuff, especially explaining some cool stuff to me. So
I got so nervous the other night. Did you see me choke when you came on? Like, I'm not a choker, but I'm like, or it was so funny. In fact, that happened the other time when I'm playing that I'm switching from the major to the Dorian thing. Larry's watching. I'm like, you know, I'm not a choker, but I'm like, I thought that I laughed because it was like me being in 7th grade. I'm like, you know what? That's kind of cool that you could have, you know, it's embarrassing, but it's a fun type of embarrassing. So much love.
Just remember, I'm tuning in to learn.
Yeah. And you know, so, and the funny thing is on Tuesday nights, I'm streaming on my other show. So I'm like, but I can watch the replay. So note to self. All right. Much love. Thank you for everybody that tuned in. LarryMitchell.com. Everybody, thanks so much. If you're watching on the rebroadcast of this and you're this far in, you are a rock star. Thanks so much. Have a great night. Larry, I'm sorry. I should know this. What's your YouTube?
It's just my name. It should just be my name, Larry Mitchell.
Okay, everybody, if you can, subscribe to Larry's channel. If you'd be so kind, if you're watching this on my YouTube, do me a favor, subscribe. Hit the like button; it helps, and then hit the bell so we can let you know when new stuff goes on. Thank you so much for hanging out. Have a great night. This has been honestly, this has been as fun as any show I've done. That includes Vi, Petrucci, Satriani, and arguably, you know, as much as I love those guys, I think I probably had more fun tonight. So there it is. All right, cheers. Good night, everybody. Take care.
Good night, everybody.